We're almost. You ready?
Yep.
Okay.
Two wires.
Board meeting, it is Wednesday, November 4th, and we have in attendance Steve Black, board member, Lori Mon, board member, Mary Shumway, board member, and Superintendent Nelson Yellowman are on the phone. Lucille, are you on yet?
I am.
Oh, and Lucille Cody, and other district staff. So I need a motion to approve the agenda.
Lucille Cody, motion.
Okay?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Superintendent spotlight.
Yes. I decided for this spotlight I wanted to just maybe preload a little bit the data that Mrs. Fitzgerald will be sharing later in the board meeting agenda regarding our option 2 students in the river region, Monument Valley, Montezuma Creek, Navajo Mountain area in these schools. As I had an opportunity to preview this data with Mrs. Fitzgerald, I was very encouraged what's happening there. And of course, I'm very much aware of the effort and the work that is being done and the detail that's being put into the explicitness of the actions of the group, our team. They're doing a phenomenal job with very, very explicit planning and a great strategy being used to be effective with the students. But I think when you see the data, at least when I saw the data, I was very encouraged that there is a number of positives, and I won't go into it at this time. I'm just going to kind of maybe preload. Mrs. Fitzgerald will open it up a little later in the board agenda, but I just wanted to pay tribute to the leadership in these communities, the teaching ranks, the staff members, all the way through from the support positions to the teaching positions. Some very, very good work is going on down in our river region, and it's coming in some very difficult circumstances. So I really appreciate what's being done down there.
Okay, thank you. Christy, is Christy online with us, or is she?
She's virtual.
Yes, I'm on the phone.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to move to our board items, and we have our audit report by Mr. Marson. And you can come up, and if you'd like to take a seat, you're welcome to remove your mask as well by yourself so we can hear you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And we appreciate being able to provide services to the district. It's always a pleasure to come down and work with your staff and work with you. The district does a good job, and financially, I think they're in a good situation. Financially, they appear to be in a good situation. We do know that you always have a capital facility plan where there's always a lot of improvements and building and things going on, and that was reflected a lot in this audit right here. And I'll talk about that in a minute. I just wanted to kind of cover pages 1 and 2 and 3, which is our opinion. And that's what the state auditor is going to be looking at. They're expecting to see what's called an unqualified opinion. That means that an unqualified opinion means that there wasn't any issues that were accounting principles that were not being followed properly, or reporting standards that hadn't been meeting the proper standards as far as reporting purposes. And so we report on the page 1 there. There's the report on the financial statements indicates the date of the financials that we reviewed, the management's responsibility, our responsibility, and the standards that we use, which is the governmental accounting standards, and GAO, or governmental accounting office standards, which is a yellow book. And on page 2 is our opinion, and it says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects. Financial position, the governmental activities, business activities, each major fund, and the remaining fund information of San Juan School District as of June 30, 2020. And the respected change in financial position and the cash flows. for the year ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. So that is an unqualified. If we had a qualification, there was an issue there where, you know, you weren't following accounting principles or reporting standards or something, we'd have additional paragraphs in there that would explain what principle or situation of concern or lack of compliance was there. What's interesting is under this other matters, we have an in relationship to part of this financial statement. It refers to required supplemental information, which is your management discussion and analysis. It's your budget to actual financial statements, because, you know, that's one of the things the state's going to look at pretty heavily is, you know, is their expenditures greater than their budget, because the budget is the authorization to spend money. It also refers to the schedule of pension contribution and the proportionate share of the net pension liability. These are things that have been added on in the last couple of years. GASB 68 requires disclosure of your pension liability along with deferred inflows and outflows. The one nice thing about it is it's not an unfunded liability. It's changed quite a bit this year. Last year it was 20 million, this year it's 12 million. But as long as you're making your annual contributions to the Utah State Retirement System, or your monthly payments, you know, you don't have to worry about having an unfunded liability sitting there, where, you know, under other circumstances or situations you could have an unfunded liability. So that's good. Other information, we talk about the schedule of federal awards, which is has to do with the Single Audit Act. And then we also talk about the combining statements. And on page 3, we refer to a report in accordance with governmental auditing standards. And that is according to Yellow Book or Governmental Auditing Office. That's the federal requirement there. There's been some changes that's going into effect there that you know, is becoming quite strict on what we can do, and when we come in and audit, there can't be a lot of adjusting journal entries. I mean, anything that any adjusting journal entries that would make maybe a material difference in your financial statement, they're saying, well, if that's the situation, you're not independent anymore. And so there's some new requirements that are coming out there. You have 3 other opinions or reports, and they're in the back, toward the back of the financial statements. One of them is your state compliance. The state of Utah requires us to examine internal controls and compliance with specific laws and regulations of the state, and so there's a report on that. We did have one finding that had to do with the 3-day deposit rule. Anytime you receive, anytime a public treasurer receives money, from the time they receive it to the time it gets into the bank can't be longer than 3 days. This was something that we used to examine and look at years ago, probably 6-7 years ago. And then they eliminated that requirement and then they brought it back. And we think that's probably a good thing. From the time you collect money until the time it gets into the bank, the sooner it gets there, the less likely that there could have some issues, different things that could happen. And so we think that's probably a good item there. Sometimes that can be an issue. You have different schools. You have the media center or language center over there. They may be collecting money and all the different schools, and so those monies, when they're collected, they need to be deposited as quickly as you possibly can. So there's the state compliance reports starts on page 77. Then you've got federal report on single audit starts on page 70, and page 68 is your GAO or your Yellow Book. All those reports. We had no findings other than that one issue with a 3-day rule, which is excellent. based on, the number of requirements and regulations that, govern school district, govern federal funds, the state, and everyone else. So, that way, as far as the report, turned out really good. I probably wouldn't mind going over a few of the financial statements. When I read the opinion, we said, we talked about governmental activities, business type activities, major funds, and then the remaining fund information. So we really opined on a lot of different things there. You have different types of financial statements in this report. Your government-wide financial statements are done on the accrual basis of accounting. And that means, we're bringing in your capital assets, we're bringing in any debt that you have, and that's all reflected in the financial statements. Then we have your governmental funds, which is done on the modified accrual basis of accounting, which is very close to cash. And so it's really money in, money out. You do have receivables, but you only have receivables that are up to like 60 days after the end of the year. So it can pay liabilities that are can be paid for the previous year, because you're going to have some big payables. And so we opine on those. And you have major funds based on the level of assets, liabilities, or revenue and expenditures you have. And so I'd like to start on page 13. That's your statement of position, or some people know it as the balance sheet. Shows your assets, your liabilities. We've got them broken out into current, non-current items. Your cash position, your governmental activities, we opined on that column, and we opined on the business type activities, which is the next column. And so anything that would be materially affecting those, if there was an issue there, then we would opine on how that affected it. And as you can see there, your cash position on your governmental funds is almost $35.5 million. You've got some property tax receivable, other governmental revenues, some inventories. Your capital assets account for about $61 million, which is a substantial amount of your net position. Then we have your current liabilities, accounts payable, some unearned revenue. Unearned revenue is money that's collected in advance, money that you have collected but is to be used or going to be used in a subsequent period. And so that's what that is. And then you have your non-current liabilities, which is net pension liability, compensated absences, which is your vacation, PTO if you have PTO, or those types of things that you have there. And then some deferred inflows and outflows that relate to money that's going to be collected but will not be reported as revenue until the future. Your net position is kind of your equity section. Net investment in capital assets, $61 million. That's after subtracting out any depreciation or debt, accumulated depreciation. You've restricted some money for school lunch, capital projects. We also, under the other, is your language center. Equity of $277,000 in that second column from the left. And then your unrestricted is money that's available to be used, $5.8 million in your governmental, $748,000 in the business type activities. The biggest change has to do in your equity section. Your unrestricted net position went down about $4 million. And that's to be understood. A lot of this has to do with capital assets. You had a lot of construction going on, a lot of improvements being made. You had the Blanding Elementary that was being worked on. If I remember right, it was the Montezuma Creek. You had some, did some remodeling. You had some track in Montezuma. Well, it would be White Horse. Yeah, White Horse, Monument Valley, and then I think Monticello High. You bought some buses, I think 4 or 5 buses. It's probably a little over $500,000. had a greenhouse you put in, I believe was around $70,000 for the San Juan School District. So that's a big thing, and you're gonna see that through the report. And that's the big, probably the biggest change there. Your cash position went down about $3.5 million, and then also you had about $4 million difference in your equity. And so, not a lot of difference there. Your business type activities, pretty consistent. I do want to talk a little bit about the language center as we get through as we get going back to this audit report. I do have some things, at least some observations there I'd like to bring up. On page 14, again, this is kind of a different income statement. They call it the statement of activity. The reason it's set up this way is on the far left is your expenditures, and they're expenditures by function. Over there on the far left, you can see whether it's instruction or supporting services as students, instructional staff, district, whatever. They show the total expenses there. Then you have three types of revenues, program revenues, which can be charges for services, operating grants and contributions, or capital grants and contribution, then showing that net amount of expenditures that is being paid by general revenues, which you come down that fifth column over from the left, you go straight down that page, you have your general revenues, your property taxes, your federal state aid and contributions that are not restricted to any specific purpose, your interest income, any surplus sales from miscellaneous, and your transfers. So your change in that position, the third line from the bottom, is $4.3 million. You had a negative, or you have a deficit in your business type activities of $41,000, and then showing your total net change, $4.2 million, almost 4.3 in the change there. And then that's kind of what on an accrual basis of accounting what's done. Some of the reasons, the big reasons I think for some of the net increase of $4.2 million has a lot to do with the capital expenditures. When we do accrual, we pull the expenditures off of your revenue and expenditure statement, we capitalize them on the balance sheet, so they don't show there. And so that reduces your expenses and increases your net change. So on page 15, is there any questions on that?
Well, yeah, just to clarify, we had a loss of $41,000 at the media center, is that correct?
You had, what's that?
We had a loss of $41,000
Oh, yes, in the language center, yeah.
at our language, our
Language arts, I believe that,
Language arts.
we've known it as the media
Media
center.
media center.
Yeah, the true loss on that one was about, there shouldn't be any much change. Really, it was $59,000 when we
But
get over to the individual funds.
Okay.
And the reason is because you had a gain of $17,000 in your rental, which offset that, and that's a total of both those two funds. And so that is, as I go through that, if you want, I can jump specifically to those funds, and we can look at those if you'd like. If if you want to, you can turn to page, that'd be on pages 19 and 20 and 21. 19 is your statement of net position or balance sheet showing your assets, liabilities, and again, these are enterprise funds, and they're run just like on the accrual basis of accounting, just like a regular business. On your rental funds, you've been transferring about $300,000 a year, and what that is pretty much equal to your depreciation, which is a amortization of your capital assets, and that's to bring money into that fund. Theoretically, to bring money into the fund, so you got repairs, you got maintenance, you got replacements, and so I'm trying to do that. And over the last four years or so, it's gone from a negative $55,000 up to $831,000 in cash. So on page 19, that top line, so there's some money there. But you go straight across from that, and in the media center, language art center, Your cash in that fund now is $569. That normally has stayed right around $35,000 for the last 3 or 4 years. But this year, you know, I can kind of show you why there's that change. There's not a lot of difference. Really, there wasn't any capital assets that were purchased on either one of these items. Your accounts payable, you know, are not very much different. And so you get down to, you still have a pretty good net position in both these funds, except in the, you look at the second line from the bottom, and the second, in that middle column there, you can see that your total net position of $283,000, that's your equity. One of the issues that we're looking at all the time is that, you know, we've talked about, and we've talked about that probably in the past, is the inventory. If you go up and you take the third line from the top and go down and look in that middle column, you got $340,000 in inventory. Now, you know, that's a current asset, but money's tied up in that. And we've talked about that. We got a substantial amount of that inventory. It doesn't turn very fast. Some of the reasoning behind why it is accumulated is because they really get a cost break when they produce larger numbers of types of materials. And so I'm not sure, you know, that's something I think in the past we've talked about and mentioned that, you know, anytime you have large receivables or inventories or something that uses cash but doesn't make it available for you, that's something you always need to look at. On the next page, though, on page 20 is your statement of revenue, expenses, and changes in net position. The big thing here is, and again, I have no idea, you know, COVID, I'm sure, has had a great effect on the district, just like it's affected so many other businesses and entities throughout the state. But just for instance, the last 4 years on your revenues, on your rental fund, $304,000 you had income. And these are numbers I just went back and pulled out. You had 2018, $303,000, 2019, $312,000. This year, $283,000. So you're down about $30,000. The nice thing about it is your expenditures were $595,000 last year, and they're $565,000. So again, you're down $30,000. So not much change in the net income on that fund. But let's take a look now at the non-make.
Greg, can you explain that a little bit? Because I think that what Mrs. Schomer is getting at is the heritage language, the decrease of revenue compared to expenditures from last year to this year. So you touched on a little bit with the COVID, the reason why we had such a detriment or why there was a decrease in the balance of that net position for that fund is because of, due to COVID-19, they weren't able to make as many sales last year. So we shrunk the expenditures for that program to accommodate the lack of revenue in that program.
Yeah, and I assume that was it. I mean, there was a significant change. You got $140,000 of revenue in that fund this year. Last year was $199,000. The year before that was $216,000. The year before that was $233,000. So again, that's, you know, and I understand. I think that COVID hit the reservation really, really hard, and I think that's where a lot of your materials are sold. I mean, I'm not totally understand what it is, but that's my understanding from our experience with it. So it's just to let you know. And as you look at that middle column there, you come down toward the bottom. It says your net operating income or loss $59,357. So it was a significant change there. You had a $282,000 operating loss on your rental, but you had a $300,000 transfer in, which gave it a $17,000 gain. Also on page 21, kind of shows you the transfers. And that's probably one of the main things that changes in the district. The only other thing is, you know, there was $13.6 million of capital assets this year, which was significant. The effect that it's had on, for instance, on your general fund, unassigned fund balance, it reduced it by about $3.5 million. And that's understandable. I mean, there was over a $5 million transfer out of the general fund into the capital projects fund. You got these big construction projects going on, and all I'm doing is just probably bringing out things that you're more than aware of. And so just to let you know there, your capital projects fund, you know, there was a deficit there of about $2.3 million. It dropped it, but your building reserve
What
fund.
page are you on now?
I'm on page 17. This shows your major funds, that's your revenue and expenditures. Overall, your general fund revenues have gone up a little over $1 million. That's a positive situation there. Your capital projects fund, really, wasn't a lot of difference there on the revenues that you had. Building reserve, that all kind of depends on how you allocate your PLA 74. Sometimes you put money in there to try to build up funds so you can go ahead and do some more construction projects. If you look, it's probably about 6 lines from the bottom where it says excess revenues over or under expenditures. That's probably your net income or net loss from operations, just from the operating. And as you look there in the general fund, you had a positive $876,000, which showing that, you know, the revenues that are coming in and the normal expenditures you have, the expenses that you have, is you still have adequate revenues. But then just below it, you show there's a $5.6 million transfer out. 5.4 went to your capital projects and $188,000 went to your student activity fund. And so, you know, your capital projects fund, you know, you're always accumulated money in there. Your total loss there was $2.3 million, understandable. You had a $13 million fund balance. You're just using some of that money that you've been accumulating, that been transferred over, or that's been accumulating there to be able to do these large construction projects you have. And you probably got a lot that you want to do or that needs to be done. So, and then on your building reserve fund, so you look at your fund balances. Fund balance is $10 million in your general fund, $11 million in your capital projects fund, $7.4 million in your building reserve fund. And then this other governmental fund it consists of your non-major funds, which is your school lunch, your student activity, and the San Juan Foundation. And so there are different financial statements for each one of those. And those are back on page 64 and 65 if you want to look at the individual, each one of those individual funds. I've looked at those funds. There's really not a lot of difference. The revenue and expenditures and your fund balances at that you have at the end of the year are still quite strong, so they're in a pretty good situation. You always have some money right around 200, maybe a little over 200,000, maybe a little under 200,000. You transfer over into the student activity fund. That's just I think that's just a normal thing that you've been doing, at least for the last couple of years, and understandably so. So I'm not sure what else you'd like me to go over, though. You know, one item that they'll talk that the state looks at probably would be over on page 60, and what that is, that's your schedule of revenue, expenses, and changes in fund balance budget compared to your actual. We have your original budget on the far left column. The next column is the final budget, and then the third column from the left is your actual amount, and then your variance is on the far right. Now the variance is the one where where the state would be looking at, and they would be looking at the expenditure, particularly the total expenditure down there. If that was a negative, or you know, if you had a unfavorable variance there, then the state would be concerned, and you'd probably get a nasty gram from them, or at least some kind of a comment. But you know, you've done well there. You're budgeting. You stayed within your budget. School districts just have to stay within budget by fund. You know, you start getting into counties, getting into counties and cities, it's by department. But that's by fund. So, you know, all in all, the district's is an excellent situation, you know, at a point in time. That's not taking into consideration the wish list and the capital facility plans that you have and that you feel need to be done. You know, we don't have any idea of what your infrastructure is like and what needs that you really have. But as far as a point in time, the district looks good. The operations during the year, you've done well. So, I don't know if you had any questions or if there's any specific area you would want me to talk about or that we could discuss. I'd be happy to do that.
No? Lucille, Superintendent Nelson, do you have any questions?
I don't believe I do at this point. I don't either.
Nelson, are you still there? I thought I heard him kick off. Okay, thank you so much for coming.
All right, thank you. I
We
appreciate it.
it. Have a safe trip back.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
That's sweet.
So I don't think, Nelson, are you on there? I don't think he is. Are you just gonna call him? I thought I heard that hook up. Okay, Mr.
Are you-
Laws. Oh, I'm sorry, what?
I was just gonna say, Nelson, are you with us? He was with us earlier.
No, I heard a beep. I think he got kicked off. Kyle's trying to call him. Hey, Mr. Laws, would you like to report? And if you don't mind, so we can hear you better, if you
Yeah.
can pass this down.
No, I absolutely don't mind, actually.
Okay, thank you. And we're doing a follow-up on your presentation.
Right, and I guess it might be more appropriate, I mean, it's your meeting, but it might be more appropriate for the superintendent or Matt or somebody to report, because I think what we're here for is to see what strides or where the communication
President?
or how it's been between the school districts, so.
Okay, yes?
If I could, I've actually delegated this to Julie and Matt, if they would
Yes.
if they would take the opportunity to debrief the board on what we've done and taken thus far, following up from our last visit. I'd appreciate that.
Okay, actually, Julie's here. Do you have something after Julie, or are you participating in this discussion?
Sure, I'll turn it
Okay,
over.
so,
Do you want me to start?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so in our collaboration, our efforts to work together and make some improvements, there were 3 areas that we talked about that Mr. Laws brought and shared with us, I don't know, a month and a half or 2 ago.
3 months ago.
3 months
Yeah,
ago.
it's been a while.
Time flies.
Time flies when you're having fun.
So that we have been working on those things and appreciate the opportunity to do that. So the first one was to form some student coalition groups, and those are our Hope and Unity groups. And so those are active groups that are happening right now. So Monticello High School had their Hope Week last week, and this week is ARL. This week and next week is ARL in San Juan High. And there's some really great things that have come out of our discussions together, and then planning and reflecting and thinking as a team. From our discussion here in the boardroom, just with following board meeting as a follow-up with Mr. Laws, we came up with some ideas that we thought would be important to incorporate and make those, strengthen that process of having Hope Week and Unity Week and those things. So we worked really closely with Trevor. The schools have with Trevor and our counselors to do some real strategic planning in communicating and training our teachers and our staff and our administrators on the processes and the importance of why and how we execute the conversations around our safe schools, you know, sexual harassment, bullying, and all of those things that we're addressing. So that has been a real positive that we've done. We were very intentional about our planning and how we executed that, the communication, the process, and then having those discussions. Teachers were really felt more supported as far as what and how they should address the videos and the situations, and great discussions at the staff level, and then we've had positive feedback on the discussions at the student level. A couple of other things that we've done with that is superintendent drafted a letter that went out to all parents prior, explaining, you know, the purpose of the videos and the significance of how we feel at the district level about sharing this important information in the schools. We've taken it from, they'll be viewed from 6th grade through 12th grade and having these conversations. They're really sticking to the Safe Schools videos and then using the questions as the follow-up that are right in the videos. But we had the letter in place, and then the schools have all sent an additional letter with times and information specific to when their Hope Weeks were happening, and then also provided an opportunity for parents to be able to come in and view the videos. So each school had a little bit of a different way of doing that, but most of them have just offered like a certain night of the week from between certain hours that parents could come in. If that didn't work, then they could schedule an appointment with their counselor and come in at any time and view the videos. There hasn't been a lot of interest in doing that ahead of time for parents, but there has been some, and so I think that was a great addition to add.
Quick question, is
Sure.
there an option for that just to be online so that parents can just view it without, you know, scheduling a time? And it just seems like that would be really simple and make it
Yeah.
more available so that parents, it would be to our advantage to have lots of parents view it and say, yeah, it's great, instead of, well, I didn't have time to go in, it's hard to make an appointment, leave my kids.
It's a software licensing issue.
Yeah, that's our only thing, because we would have loved, we actually thought about that, even, you know, to make it accessible for all of our option 3 students and our option 2 students in the river region, and so we want to try to make it accessible for everyone, and that's been our holdup, but so to work around is that's what we've done for this year. The other thing that we discussed was teaching the RAD classes and bringing those into the school district. And we are totally, we're open to that and want to make that happen. That was left in our last conversation with Mrs. Shumway. Mrs. Shumway at the Sheriff's Office, she was going to put a flyer together and then communicate back to the school district on that. And so that's the point we're at. We're just, when she's ready to go with that, we're ready to schedule the rooms and the space and help publicize that and make that happen in the communities. The third one was really kind of working together with teachers to help identify some teachers to be maybe what was kind of termed as safe super reporters. We've talked a lot about this, and we just really feel strongly that we don't want to minimize the role of any teacher not being a reporter, a mandatory reporter. And so one of the workarounds that we've done with this is that as we've had the conversations and the training with the teachers, we've asked the teacher, help them better understand their role as a mandatory reporter, and then in turn, we've had them explain to students, you know, what that means and their role, and that anyone that they feel comfortable in the building, they could go to. And so we haven't necessarily, you know, chosen to designate certain individuals as super reporters, kind of people, but we have had additional conversations with teachers and with students on what reporting means and how to report, and anything beyond that we can't handle at the school. We have connections that we will support them beyond that, getting the help that they need. So that's kind of where we're at.
So I guess the only thing I would add, I will say that it's been great. A couple of things that I've seen that have changed or improved over the last couple of months is communication between the various other entities that I work with and the school district. Matt's pretty good about having at least a weekly, sometimes he wishes it was only weekly, phone call or conversation with me to make sure we're on the same page, and if there's anything that I need to know or he needs to know that we're sharing appropriate information. I've had a chance to listen to or view most of the videos, certainly the ones that were relevant to the subject that is of concern to me right now. And I had some concerns with maybe those videos not being clear enough, or maybe conflating issues and combining, for example, sexual harassment with sexual assault, and maybe portraying them as the same thing, when I think that would be erroneous. But Matt and I specifically have had the opportunity to talk about that and figure out ways to use those videos, which I think all in all are really good videos, and using the questions and the talking point for the teachers with the students kind of work around and maybe get some of that information to be maybe a little bit more clear. And so that's been helpful as well, and that kind of put to ease some of the concerns that I had and that my office had with some of the information that was portrayed in the videos. And so all in all, I think it's going good. I've heard from 3 separate teachers from Monticello about their experiences with showing the videos to their classes last week. 2 of the 3 raved about it, said that they had discussions with their classes that they would have never imagined that their classes opening up about and talking about. The other one was a little bit more what I expected, which was it was very flippant and nobody really took it seriously. The age group, and that sort of thing may have come into play there. I think we're on the right track. I appreciate the school district jumping on board and taking this and running with it as well, just so that the school district is aware, because I've tried to be very clear all along that I don't think this is necessarily a school district issue. I think it's a community issue. The school district just happens to be a part of the community. And so we've also had meetings with a wide range. I believe there were 5 separate religious organizations that attended an ecclesiastical meeting that we had to talk about that aspect of it. We've had some other community meetings with different groups, not with the community as a whole at this point, but with other organizations or groups of organizations. And those have been very helpful as well. And so again, I appreciate the school district's willingness to jump on board and to assist and to help with this issue and taking it for what it is. And I don't think it's something, unfortunately, that we'll see. It's not something that's a couple of months fix. I think we're talking years in order to kind of reverse the course, and hopefully it's faster than that. But I think we're on the right track, and so I appreciate you having me back, and I appreciate the work that the school district staff, administrative staff has put into it as well.
I'd just like to echo what Mr. Laza said in the fact that I do think that our relationships with other agencies, other community, other partners in facing this challenge has dramatically improved. I do feel like we are starting to have those conversations that will be very impactful. And as we continue to work as a group, as a coalition, there's plenty for everybody to do, and the school district is eager and wants to do its part to address this very concerning behavior. But all in all, are cautiously optimistic with our student organization groups, the Hope Squad, the Unity Squads, our student advocates, social workers, counselors, really excited about the spark that we're seeing in the conversations that are taking place to address this community-wide problem. So,
the last thing that I would add is, and then if you have any questions, is just for information purposes, from the last meeting that I was at with the school board to the present, there's been an increase of reported incidents of 25%, which is pretty substantial actually. That being said, most of them are delayed reports, and so we're hopeful that maybe we're catching up, and maybe we can stay ahead of it. And with everybody being on board with educating the community members from the youth all the way up through their parents and other adults in the community, we're hopeful that we can stay ahead of it and not get behind it. So,
President,
Yes, Lucille?
I have a question.
Sure.
Now, could we get, speaking on behalf of our Native American scholars, could we get some of this stuff culturally literate? Because, some of our teaching is like we teach and then self-identity in our culture, and is there a way we could get some of this stuff culturally literate for our scholars?
Lucille, I think Christy, I mean, she's got several presentations. She'd be the one that can address that when we get to her part next. Christy, did you hear that?
Yes.
So either,
Can I weigh in on that?
sure.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and certainly something we could do. We could work carefully with our resources amongst our district staff and try to build some of that would be resources that we could use that were more culturally sensitive and appropriate in that area. So we'll give that some work. Okay. Our heritage language director would be a good one. Yep, exactly. That's who I'm thinking too.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have anything else?
I think Julie
I
was
was
gonna
just
add
gonna
something.
tag on to,
Sure.
we talked about kind of the, maybe catching up with some of these cases and concerns with, just because of this education. And we also have the Safe UT app that we've had available in the district for, a few years, that students can go in, parents can go in, they can report. And we have seen this year, an increased, number of tips and an increased number of chats. So that is very
I
helpful.
can't hear what you're saying.
I was just talking about, we have the Safe UT app that we've had in the district for several years, and we have had an increase this fall with students being able to put tips on there, give us tips, and we could have chats with them to get them support. So I think that educating and having these conversations is really just the starting point for helping students to open up and get the help that they need.
Yes. So, okay, go ahead.
I had a question. When you mentioned that it was presented in school, I may have missed it. What were the age groups? You said the first one went well, then the next one not as well.
So
maybe
the
because of
the
age?
younger the age, the better it went. The age, the older the class that it was all categorized. If the teacher was nicer, but it was a bit of a train wreck. Was one of the more advanced, like 11th or 12th grade level class.
Okay. And the other one was what age? Do you know?
Like your 7th, 8th freshmen, those ages seem to take it a lot better and run with it a lot better. Was the feedback that I got, and I don't know if Matt or anybody else got more than that.
To add to that, yeah, we did have some classes that were more receptive, more mature about it, had better conversations than others. But overall, we are extremely satisfied with how effective it was and the fact that it's starting conversations. For example, not having had any conversation with my son who is a junior, he came home to tell me, hey, look at what we did. And I just let him start talking, and it was a great experience as a parent and rewarding to know that, we're having some positive results in the school with that now. It's going to vary, but overall it was a positive experience.
So I guess, as I think of this as a whole, not only as a board member, but also as a community member, I feel like that you have to bring the negativity out to make it aware to everyone, which has been done. It's been done through our media outlets, and it's been done by word of mouth. However, I also feel like we're heading in a direction for positivity, and I don't know if it's possible somewhere in the future that we could maybe resonate that there is progress being made, because I think when you read that on paper and you see that, you feel like, oh, it's so terrible out there, and look at what our community's done to fail these youth or whoever might be involved. It kind of be nice somewhere down the road that maybe, 9 months from now, that with this collaboration and all this effort, that we could say, hey, this is what's happening because of the awareness. Just something to keep in mind.
Absolutely.
That maybe in the future there could be, that out there that people can see that this is working, that we have people on board that want to make this happen and make those changes, so that they feel like the effort just isn't in vain, and that all parties are working together, and that the more we speak out as adults in schools and churches or whatever it might be, and work together, that problem can become better.
Absolutely.
Attacked, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, and I agree with you that if the change is going to continue, then it needs to be supported by some positive reinforcement. I
Sure.
absolutely agree with that. And then there's, there's other irons in the fire that we've noticed with regards to maybe some legislation that needs to be changed, because we ran into some problems with changes at the legislature that have really been harmful to the victims of these crimes, and quite honestly, some of the perpetrators. It's been more harmful to them than rehabilitative, and so those are all things that are in play here. Like I said, this isn't a couple months fix. We're years, but I agree with you. If anybody is willing to, the media doesn't typically like me, but if they will talk to me, I would be more than happy to tell them that we're having good experiences and that things are looking better. Absolutely.
So maybe that's something that we want to keep in mind as a district, to push somewhere in the spring and get that out there. I think that needs to be made known to our public, what is being done and how we are helping with that problem. Not just us, but everyone is helping with that problem. So, okay, anything else?
Another comment. I really appreciate all the work, from our district to everybody in the community and the county who is participating in this, because it seems like in the old days that the best way was just to shelter people. And if that was a good thing at any time, that's long gone. Education and talking about things so that people understand all these things, from boundaries to what did just happen and what is the law and what is appropriate, what's not appropriate. Those kinds of things, the more they're out there, and the other part of the school district being part of that, as well as other, churches and things like that. So once our kids get in school, the school or somebody else, a soccer team, a baseball team, basketball, everybody else has our kids more hours than we do as parents. And I also think that often if you try to talk to your child, depending on your child's personality and or grandchild's personality and in yours and dynamics and things, sometimes they don't want to go there. Sometimes they do. I had kids that were willing to talk about things and other things that weren't. But sometimes with their peers and these kinds of videos they really are well done the way they're approached, they're sometimes a lot more willing to start having those conversations with peers. I mean, not always, but if we have a lot of options for kids, then I think the messages really get to them. Because I know sometimes, you just can't, you're grateful in a community that helps raise your kids, because sometimes there's places where parents can't do something that community can, or friends can, church, some things like that. So I think the whole group, everybody involved, is what is going to provide that education that really penetrates and helps kids understand and helps parents understand. I've learned some things from this. So anyway, thanks to everybody. It's been awesome.
And thank you for having me back.
All right. Okay, Christy.
Okay.
Okay,
So,
are you there?
can you hear me? Yes.
3,
Can you
4,
hear me?
5, and 6. So you can just move through those as you want. I'm not going to stop you on each one. Is that all right? Just let us know when you're ready.
Yep,
for the
that's
next
perfect.
one. Okay.
So, as far as the sex education materials process, once anything that we're going to use beyond what USBE provides for us has to go through a certain process, and that includes a review to make sure it's in line with the state rule for health education, and then it goes to a committee. That committee consists of district staff as well as parents and medical professionals. Then if they choose to approve it, then it comes to the school board for your. The items that you have there have all been approved through that committee, and were approval through the school board. So 2 things of note. First, with the CCAVEN curriculum, the health teachers also reviewed it and asked that we add this statement before it is taught in the 9th grade curriculum, because there's one component there they felt might be triggering for some students. And then the other part is with maturation, we've made a change this year to make it more consistent across the district. We are recommending that we use the videos that you're able to do. Maturation is an opt-in for 5th grade. The maturation would be separated between boys and girls, and we're asking as the presenters a teacher, a male and female teacher at each of our schools that can help with playing that video. They wouldn't necessarily answer questions that might come up. We do have our school nurses involved with that, and they would take on that role. But we would need them as presenters to be in the room and to show the video. Any questions? Okay.
I have a question. This is Nelson.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Nelson.
I'm just curious, looking at this list of the recommendations from the committee. I don't know every single one of these individuals, but are there any Native Americans, Navajo, Ute tribal members on this list?
Let me take a look. What we did is we asked our 5th grade teachers who are currently teaching that class, a male and a female as possible, to be those presenters. So let me just look at this list and I'll tell you. It does not look like we have any presenters. So that is definitely something, you know, we could ask a teacher from another grade level to be a presenter if that's a recommendation of the board.
This is where Lucille chimed in on this cultural sensitivity. Looking at the toolkit as for our Native students, again, the clanship is very important for healthy relationships. So I would suggest that we integrate that, and we do have heritage language teachers. We have a bilingual program in our school district, so I don't see any problem using these individuals. And also, we're talking both genders. So in the Dene culture, there's one for female and one for male. So if you can focus on one of each, that would be great, a male and a female, because those are part of our students, our teaching in the young students when they become of young adults.
So just to clarify, the maturation is completely different than the rest of the curriculum that we presented. The additional curriculum for the Seek Haven that we're requesting approval on is just a resource for our health teachers, and we do have Navajo health teachers. In fact, the health teacher that is on our committee is Navajo and is from Monument Valley. So the input, and we have multiple members of our committee who are Navajo as well. I don't believe at this time we have anyone representing, you know, our Ute tribe, but that is definitely something we could look at. But as far as the curriculum, any health curriculum that's approved, that the health teachers in our secondary school, 7th through 12th, make the decision whether they're going to integrate that in as part of their curriculum for the year. Rather, when we approve it, it's just a resource that they have available. So if they're using something from the state-approved curriculum or other things we've approved in the past, they don't have to adopt any of these, you know, curriculum tools. It's just part of an option for them once they're approved that they can use those. As far as maturation in the elementary school, again, it's only for 5th grade. And, you know, the videos, it's pretty specific what we're supposed to cover in maturation in board rules. So I know we have looked at in the past possibilities of integrating, you know, some of the components, but this it really doesn't align with what the state is asking us to do for maturation. So that typically is integrated in other ways in the school, especially like K. It's definitely something that's integrated in other programs throughout the school, not just in heritage language, because that's such a big part of our schools that are located on the Navajo Nation. So that is happening in the schools, just not as part of maturation.
Christy?
Yes.
And I would also just add, this is Trevor Olson, that this is a list that we are adding for approval, but it is not a list of all of the current things that we are doing. So we do have Beauty Way curriculum, And we do have social workers that are working with students during this time to have ceremonies that they would like to have, including the Kinalda ceremony. And so they're helping them in many different ways. These are just the new resources that we're requesting to be approved so that we can add them to our list of options too. So if Board Member Yellowman would like a list of those other curriculums that are being used, we could also provide those as well, so you could see all of the options that we have as resources during this maturation period that we're trying to help support the students.
Does that
Well,
help answer that,
don't
Nelson?
don't only make it available to me. Make it available to the public and the parents and even Navajo Nation. Because they'll be the one that's going to be looking at it as well, not just me.
Yeah, so we can definitely make it available to everybody. We have the resources here. We can share it with board. We can share it with many of our teachers it's already been approved, and our teachers are using those things. So we can definitely make sure you know what is available, and we currently are working on any of those resources that we can include or we find that we want to add, similar to these toolkits that we're adding today.
Is there licensing issues with all of this stuff?
Not with all of it. So that these new items that are being presented, we do have a list over the past 15, 20 years of that sexual education committee of all of those curriculums that have been approved for years. So once it's been approved by that committee and by this board, then we can add that as an approved list that our health teachers in any of our schools can use in their health classes. So some of those have already been approved. These are the new ones that we would like to move forward on today.
Does that answer that, Nelson?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Trevor. Okay, Christy?
Thank you.
Okay, so as part of our health assurances to USC, we're required to provide this data, which is also provided to us from USC, and the board is supposed to review this data. As far as the data that's here, I just want to point out one absence of data. Our River Region schools report to different agencies than the rest of our schools for the sexual abuse data. We've been trying to acquire that data but have not been able to get that yet. As soon as we have that, I will return to the board and present that data to you as well.
Okay.
Any questions about that data?
Any questions? Any questions, Nelson or yourself?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't.
All right.
Okay, so moving on to AP and concurrent enrollment. As part of the requirements for our concurrent enrollment funding that we receive from the state, we're required to provide this data to the board to review annually. And then we have a plan in place for any achievement gaps that might show in the data. So this year, currently, we are working on the achievement gap for English learners. And some of the strategies we're using is more training and implicit bias at our schools and more parent engagement so that they understand at an earlier age in the process of what concurrent enrollment looks like in San Juan School District, what opportunities are there. This also braids in really nicely with our ACE grant that we'll be starting. So between that and our concurrent enrollment plan, we are hoping to close that achievement gap for English learners. Any questions about the concurrent enrollment data?
No. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Moving on to our distance learning data for the River Region. You have the numbers that were from a week ago. I also have some updated numbers, and just want to share with you that this process is a continual process that as our schools in the San Juan River Region have their intervention systems in place and following up with students, this is constant or changing number as we get more students passing classes and making up assignments. So as we think about that data, that is part of it. So just a second and I'll share it with you. Okay, so the updated data for Monument Valley High School, they're now down to 5% of students with failing 50% of more of quarter one classes, 21% that are at some risk, so have 1 to 3 classes they're failing, and then 74% are on track with no F. Whitehorse data is the same. Well, I think we've had one minor change. At the at-risk category, they now have less than 1%. Navajo Mountain has 6% minimally engaged, 25% at risk, and then 69% on track. So our overall numbers for all of the River Region secondary schools is 2% minimally engaged, 11% at risk, and 87% on track. So we have seen some progress even from a week ago. We expect that for the majority of those students, that progress will continue over the next couple weeks so that they are passing all of their first quarter classes.
Where are you looking? Am I on the right page?
No, so a week ago is the data that you have that's attached to the board docs, but since then, the schools have made additional progress, so that's the data I just verbally shared with you.
But we don't have the current.
Yeah. Well, that's as of this morning. So you have, as of last week, when this was submitted to the board as part of your agenda, and then I also ran the report this morning because I knew that we had made progress in the region. So that's the data I just verbally shared with you.
So we're looking at yesterday's news.
Right, and it will always be that way. So by tomorrow, the data will change again, excitingly, because students will have come into the school or have received additional support from teachers and have made up grades. So that data has changed every day in the past 7 days, and I would expect it will continue to change over the next 14 days.
Can I just add in there that, Nelson, we try to all board agendas and attachments try to be finalized 24 hours prior to board meeting. So Christy's just sharing with you some information that she's aware of that's very current on what was attached to the board meeting last Friday.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Christy.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions about that data that I can answer for you?
I don't think, any from the board? No, I'm a little, not surprised, but the numbers are better than I thought they would be for being, completely virtual. That's good. Anything else?
Yeah, and I really attribute that to the teams in the schools working together, the advisories that have been put in place at the high schools as well to really streamline that system. There's been a lot of work by our liaisons of actually going out to homes of students we can't get a hold of. So, it's really been a team effort at each of those schools, and they've done a tremendous job to really meet the individual needs of each student and each family.
Yeah, that's great. Any other questions, Nelson, Lucille?
One more comment. Can I make
Sure.
a comment, President?
Uh-huh.
I think one other main factor is the staffs have been able to have a single focus. They have only been virtual. They have not tried to do in-person and virtual, which I think has really allowed them to be very, very explicit and strategic in their approach. And it's showing that it's, in my opinion, I actually was very encouraged by this data, and there's a lot of evidence of effectiveness here. So I think having that single platform and that single focus has definitely been a benefit to them.
So, Christy,
And
is that
Can I just add one comment as well? It has been tremendous to see the support of the community and the parents that are, contacting the school, that want their students to be successful, that are driving them to the school to get individualized support. It has really been a tremendous outpouring of community and parent support for these students. So that definitely has to be attributed to the success we've had as well.
Thank you. So,
One more comment.
okay, go ahead.
I am assuming when we get these towers up and going, we should see much improvements as well.
Hopefully.
Yes, so we would see improvements, and I think the other component of that is that it will allow the teachers to go more in depth and do more than what they're able to do now. We're still teaching the essential standards and meeting, students have to meet the standards, but when you look at this overall, the level that they can learn at is not quite the same as it will be once we have internet access and, access for them to use a variety of programs as well via the internet. So we're very much looking forward to that. The other piece that's missing as part of this is the huge part of, our students' life is that social component, that peer influence and interaction, and that social learning that comes from having collaborative discussions, argumentation. That's really limited without internet.
Thank you.
Okay, so Julie and Christy, because you provided that document for last board meeting, to me this is a working document. Can we have that updated every board meeting so we can kind of monitor that progress? I would like to see that. Did you get that, Christy?
I can share some information.
Pardon me?
Later I can share some information during the re-entry plan discussion about where we landed for those for an option 2 and where we not.
Okay, actually, sorry, what, Christy?
I was just going to say, this is a report that we gather after every quarter, so this would be very easy to share with the board. We'd be happy to do that.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so we are going to, thank you for your reports. Is Barbara on the phone?
She said she would call in. Barbara, have you been able to make it on the conference call? She responded to me, and then she hasn't responded to me for a minute.
Okay, so we're waiting for Barbara Silversmith to do her principal's report. Do you want to try to call her maybe?
Let me send her text.
Yeah, will you please? Because our next discussion is kind of lengthy, so I'd rather have her come on.
Yes, I'm on. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can. How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Good. So obviously the way this kind of works is we get to ask you the questions, all right? Can you hear all of us?
Yes, I have to actually turn you down first on the on the actual board meeting. Now I'm just going to focus on you right here on the phone, so go ahead, yes.
Okay, perfect. So we'll start. Nelson, do you or Lucille want to start?
I'll take a pass.
I'll start. Take a pass. Okay, Mary.
I'll start. I'm interested in knowing, in hearing a little bit what you're going to do with the parents, on, just helping to educate them and some of the things you have planned.
Okay, so you're asking me, Mary, what I plan on doing with my families, my parents,
Yes.
and educating them?
Yes.
Okay. Well, if you can see the data that I have presented, I just collected this from my staff, and based on observation, we collected some data towards the end of the quarter, at the end of first quarter we did, and part of that deals with parents. If you look at slide 3, as far as how many parents are signed up for Canvas app. How many parents need support to know how to support their child, and how many families utilize the Thursday Family Connection Day. Those are some of the things that we collected about our families, because one of the things we realized is that Family Connection is a huge, huge piece to this virtual learning. So therefore we had to address that, and that was huge, and part of that is, as far as our plans, what we did was we made a specific day for our families to come in and say, this is a day we can call you, we can set up a Google Meet with you. If you can't do either of those, we can set up an appointment, you can come in, but we need to be able to make contact with you parents as well as your students. So we've been doing that, and we also have set up a goal for the parents, and this was also in support of the SEC committee, and that we would set up 100% of our parents would sign up for that Canvas app, and we've done really well so far. We have 51% of our parents that have signed up, and we still have some more to do, but we're working on that, and they have found that to be very, very helpful for them as they have learned what that Canvas app can do for them in helping support their child, and also being able to look at the progress of where their students are at with the Canvas assignments and their grades and so forth, and so they really have liked that. So we're doing those things, and we're also continuing
to reach out to families on a daily basis, not just a Thursday, but even on a daily basis, we reach out to families, to students. And that's the only way it really is a team effort, as Christy had said earlier. It is a team effort, you know, the school, the teachers, the families, the guardians, the students. I mean, we all have to be in this together to strive to make this successful for the students so that they can be learning.
Okay, quick follow-up question on that. That was good information, thank you. Do you have current contact information and phone numbers for all of the parents, or has that been an issue in keeping in contact with some of them?
Well, we did that during registration time back in May or even June, when some extra days were given to us to start registering some families and helping them to understand what option 1, 2, and 3 was all about. I had teachers come in, we made phone calls, and that was, during that time, we had teachers also update the email for families. If they didn't have it, we got it from them. So I feel like probably about 90% of our data would be accurate, because a lot of them change. Their phone numbers change a lot of times, and their email. But I'd say we have about 90% of our data for our families. Our information is pretty accurate.
Okay, so you're saying 10% are difficult to keep in touch with right now because you don't have current telephone numbers, and is that?
Well, like I said, they consistently change.
Yeah.
So we think we have a current one. We call them, and then the phone numbers change, or sometimes they change their email, and so it's just a few families, not very many.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Steve, did you have a question?
Yeah. How's that new building?
Oh, we love it. We love the new building. It's just great. We need our kids back, though.
That's true. So, okay. So my question to you is, what are your challenges is with your teachers finding enough time? Do you feel they're getting really burned out, or do you feel that they're figuring ways to make it work?
You're talking about my teachers, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if you notice on the slide with the challenges as far as my teachers are amazing. That's all that I can say about them, because they go above and beyond. They really, we've had a lot of best practices in place prior to this pandemic, and so from there we continued to implement that. There wasn't anything we adjusted and said, no, we're just going to do away with that and try to just push out these assignments. We had to go back and say, we modeled for students. We did guided practice. We did, assessment. We gave feedback. And so all those things, are still implemented into the Canvas instruction that they're doing. So that is very time consuming. Like, for example, if a student had to model, they would just record themselves, do a video, and then embed that into the Canvas platform. And so doing that several times, or even, more than several times with each of the content areas, and then also inserting different videos that would help as a resource. I mean, it just takes a lot of time. So I commend my teachers. They have done amazing. However, they've been spending a lot of time, in between when they're here at work. I mean, as I put it in my challenges, about 20 to 40 hours teachers per week are spending that amount of time to produce this so that our students can be successful. So it is a challenge, yes. Yeah. They are struggling with the time factor of how much time it is taking to do this, and there are times when it is taking a toll on them, yes.
Sure. So one last question is, with the Canvas.
I have one too.
With the Canvas app with your parents, do you find it's more internet capability, or is it more getting them there, just finding them, or is it some just are not familiar with the computer? Did you get that as to why maybe they're not signed up for the Canvas app?
Oh, why they're not signing up for it?
Yeah.
Well, part of it is that it's technology part of it they don't quite understand, and so we have invited them to come in, and the teachers are willing to work through for them to sign up, the process, and then to help them through to utilize that. So I think part of that, or that's one part. Another part is it could be the device that they have, but you can use it on multiple devices. But it just could be that the device that they have is not able to allow that to work. And part of it too is that there are some families who we still are struggling coming into the school or actually making contact with us, or we make contact but we never connect, and those are the very few families that we have.
Sure. Okay, Lucille, one question?
I was going to ask about the internet services out there for your students, your scholars.
Well, the internet service really has improved from when we started first at the beginning of the school year, because I've got a great technology coach, a tech coach who has organized as far as the students where they live, who has Verizon, who has what kind of service do they have, and then from there who needs a hotspot and who has internet service. So she helped really organize all that, and with that information we had, we're able to just consistently improve each time and iron out a lot of the technology issues. And the teachers have to limit how much they put on their Canvas platform also, as far as with their instruction. And because they only have so much usage on their hotspot. So things like that we have to consider.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anything else? Barbara, thank you for joining us. We know it's a struggle, but we hope you feel support.
Yeah, just so you know, you guys can read our articles that was done. It's on the Salt Lake Tribune, and I think it's just a tribute to our teachers and to our school for the amazing job that as a school we're doing. And anyway, so when you guys get a chance, read it.
Okay, thank you. Have a good day.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, Superintendent, do you want to start with number 7
Yes.
and 8?
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
So, item number 7. Just thought I'd start by talking currently where we are at again, and just maybe quickly review what we're seeing across the district. Again, in the river region, I want to report to you, we are teaching virtually. We are experiencing the things we've talked about tonight, the internet challenges, although I think the internet, our technology department and our teachers and our staffs across the region have been phenomenal to make this work, and the data that you saw tonight was very encouraging. At least I was very encouraged and believed it was much better than I anticipated it would be as far as students being on track and making progress academically. So that's kind of where I'd report with the river region. The mountain region, I'm sure you're very much aware that we are experiencing an outbreak right now, a spike in positive cases in both communities of Blanding and Monticello. That has definitely had an effect on our schools. Some of those positive cases have certainly affected not only our students, but sometimes our staff. Even Superintendent Nielsen is home right now on COVID isolation. So it's definitely had a ripple effect through what we're trying to accomplish and the things we're experiencing. I think the work with the health department has been very strong. We recognized maybe early on that it needed to be improved, reached out to Mr. Benj, and we found great cooperation with the health department. We make a daily call with them now, and I think we've seen some better communication to help us with contact tracing and making sure that we're communicating with our stakeholders. So that is definitely a current reality right now that we're dealing with these spikes in cases. I think we are trying to navigate it as efficiently as possible. I do want to point out that, that going back to our board meeting here just a few weeks ago, we remember that in the mountain region where the teachers were both doing the in-person and the virtual, we had quite a voice being expressed that it was not sustainable, that there was just not, that the teachers could not sustain the workload. And I don't know if you've noticed, but in the paper even yesterday, a similar action was taken by Weaver as what we took. We decided to move our virtual only into option 3 and to eliminate the dual platform for our teachers. I don't know if you noticed, but Weaver School District is similar as that as well, in that they did remove the dual platform from their teachers. And they do still have an option 2 available, but they have to check into a completely different, what they call a different school, to be in their virtual option so that their teachers are not teaching dual platforms there. I also want to update the board that there has been a lot of concern about our elimination of option 2 in the mountain region for those students that were involved in option 2. There's been concern come both to the district, through me, through parents. It's come to schools. It's even, I've been involved with a committee on the Navajo Nation, their Health and Education Committee. There was some concern being talked about at that level. I've been able to visit with the superintendent of the department, the Department of Education, Superintendent Ghani. And so I've been able to have some conversations and work directly with parents to try to make this transition away from option 2 in the mountain region as smooth as possible for our parents. I know our schools, our counselors, our administrators have been very active, even from the very night the decision was made, to reach out to parents to help them and their students make a smooth transition. And before I'm done, I would like Julie maybe to speak to a little update of where that stands. But I do know that there's a feeling that's very strong that we need to ensure that we have a viable virtual option for our students that live on the Navajo Nation but attend our mountain schools and wish to do so virtually. There's a strong, it has been a strong message communicated to me that we want to be careful not to compel our students to feel the need that they must attend in-person classes if that's not what they choose, because there's a lot of concern with our students going off of the Navajo Nation and back on the Navajo Nation, especially with the rising cases in the Blanding and Monticello area. So I would speak to that just a little, and I believe that, we've looked at that very carefully, and we know that option 3 is still what we believe is a viable option. It allows our students to go into a very personalized commercial curriculum, to have a teacher assigned to support them, so they're not just on their own, they're not just kind of assigned something and then no one ever checks in on them. We have a teacher that is assigned and compensated to be a teacher of record for them. And like we stated in last board meeting, on option 3, though the sample size is smaller, the percent of successful students was actually higher. So we do believe it's a viable virtual option for our students. Another thing that we have seen that I believe is also a viable virtual option is that we've had a number of students that have said, on a temporary basis, while we navigate this pandemic, I am going to enroll at Whitehorse or at Bluff or one of the schools in the river region that are focused only on option to virtual delivery of instruction. So if they feel strongly that they still want that classroom connection to 8 different teachers and they want to be right in that type of a setting, there is still that option for them as well. But I do want the board, and I don't want to mislead the board, because I do want the board to be aware that there has certainly been some concern. There has certainly been, I believe, a fair amount of well, concern's probably the word, that will this be viable and will it work out in the best interest of students. And I also want the board to be very much aware that I believe schools have been extremely proactive in reaching out and working carefully with parents and students to make this transition. So with that said, I would maybe call on Julie just to update the board on what these students, what it looks like, and maybe just give a quick, brief summary of what you've seen at the school level in the mountain region. Julie, could you do that?
Sure, I'm going to scoot a little closer so they can hear. He says. Okay, so what I'll do is I just have some current data as of today, actually, to kind of let you know in the transition where our students went. So our option 2 students we talked about last month, and so now some have gone to option 1 and some have gone to option 3, and kind of where that is at each school. So I'll just briefly go through that. So at LaSalle, they were all option 1 and they've stayed all option 1. At Monticello Elementary, we have 2 students that went to option 1, and we have 13 that went to option 3. And then we have 2 students that are looking at additional options that haven't continued at Monticello Elementary. At Blanding Elementary, we have 41 students that went from option 2 to option 1, and 42, so it was a pretty good split there, that went to option 3. And all of the families have been contacted, at Monticello as well, but at Blanding, and 1 student or parent just hasn't responded as of their choice. So there's just 1 lingering. 2 of the families, which is 6 students, have transferred to Bluff to enroll in option 2.
So what do you do if the parent doesn't contact?
We continue to contact. They've done home visits.
Do they?
So at the 10-day, they have to drop them.
Okay.
And then if they want to re-enroll, we'll re-enroll them. But that's really the parent's responsibility to reach out. And I mean, we've contacted, and they've documented and called and done home visits. And then at that point, you do all you can do, and a parent needs to take that responsibility to enroll their child. So yeah, at the 10-day drop, we'll have to drop them. Okay, for the secondary schools, ARL had 32 students that moved to option 1, 48 that moved to option 3, and 4 of those 4 students enrolled in option 2 at Whitehorse. San Juan High, 109 moved to option 1, and 51 moved to option 3. There were 5 students that they're still trying to contact and reaching out to, and 6 of the students at San Juan High did choose option 2 at Whitehorse, and they live down there.
Oh. Julie, is that the case with everybody that's
Yeah. They live in that area, so it was a better fit for them. So we just transfer their records, and they start with those new schools. At Monticello High School, 47 students went to option 1 and 17 students went to option 3. And the schools reached out multiple times. They only have 1 student that is undecided at this point. So we've asked counselors and administrators to try to put you can't really put a hard and fast deadline, but we're trying to wrap everything up as far as changes of enrollment by this Friday, and have everybody in place. So you can see by the numbers, there's really just a handful that we're still reaching out to across the mountain region. I do want to mention that, through this process, really, communication has just been vital in reaching out to the parents, and I won't sugarcoat the fact that we did have upset parents. Not the majority of them, but we knew that there would be parents in that group and that weren't happy about that change. But I will tell you that the administrators have done, and the counselors have done, a phenomenal job of reaching out and addressing that in a very positive way. They have had made multiple calls to some parents and families that just weren't sure what they wanted to do. It's a very sensitive sensitive concern to them. It hits home. It's hard. It's challenging for them to really decide. But they've worked, over a few days. They worked through it. They have invited them in to come sit down and talk about a learning plan that would work for their child. What we found is if parents were willing to do that, we've found a plan that will work for them. And so that's one of the biggest things we've learned is communication is key. Being able to have that open communication and parents willing to talk. I mean, some really were very angry and it took a while to get through and make a plan, but we're getting there, and we really appreciate the parents' support in that process because we recognize the sensitivity and the challenge that they're up against in making that decision to whether to come back face to face. Really the biggest difference in option 2 for a student perspective and a parent perspective, the biggest difference for them would be, the online platform, it's still an online platform. The difference is they aren't using school district curriculum, and they aren't directly connected to each one of their individual teachers in the school district, but they do have a content area teacher in every course they take in Edgenuity that they can reach out to daily in the district. So really, there's a lot of similarity going on there. And so if we help parents understand that and understand how to reach out in either option 2 or option 3, parents just have to take a vital role. They just have to, and for students to be successful and motivate and monitor, because we don't see the student face to face. So there's just a lot of communication that we've had to spend a lot of time with parents, even understanding their role in option 3. And we even figured some of that out in option 2. Just helping them understand how does it work and when can I call, and can my student come to the school and meet with a teacher? Absolutely. And all of those things can be worked out. They just need to know how. So educating that whole process is a really important piece as well.
So real quick, if I may, Mr. Porter, you're in the audience. Do we feel a little relief in our school?
You betcha. I asked the teacher that today during IEP, and she was like, "Oh yes, it feels so much better for them." And speaking to the parents, one of my most upset parents about it, whose child was very successful in option 2. I saw her 2 days ago and asked her. Okay, she did not want to move to option 3,
Sure.
but she's like, "Oh, you know what? It is working out just fine." And she says, "In fact, I think there's more to this than what you guys are giving us." And I'm like, "Yes, I know," and she's found it to be very successful.
Okay, thanks.
So I don't think all of the the stress and stuff has gone away for teachers because they're continuing to build those Canvas courses. And that is a huge, massive undertaking. But what we've really tried to help the teachers understand is that it doesn't have to be a glamorous course. It needs to be the bare bones of those essential standards. And that has been a really hard thing to help our teachers understand, because they want to do well. They want to provide everything for every child, no matter what setting they're in. And so just wrapping their head around that mentality is, this remote learning is just, it's really teaching us a lot, but that's been an important piece. I will say that there is a good feel in our buildings right now. As much as craziness is going on, the parents it's really strengthening our communication with parents through these challenges. So that's really a neat thing. And we'll always have things we're going to have to, stumble through and work through and problem solve. But overall, the positivity and the learning plans that have been put together and the student placement feels good, and parents have been very positive working through it. So
Question.
Yeah.
You mentioned that students can still get support from district teachers. So is that happening much, and is that continuing?
it's not happening near like we would like it, because it's a new process. So what happens is we have a teacher of record assigned to every content area in the secondary, or content area cluster, I should say. So some of our like CTE courses, we've lumped some of those, like business courses would be all lumped under one teacher of record, and then our tech courses would all be lumped under another teacher of record. So those are clusters that teachers are overseeing. So if it's a science really 612 question, they go to Mrs. Pace. and she can work with them on that. So they're not reaching out, and that is a huge piece that we're working on, is helping students and parents understand how and when, and because really the courses are very self-paced. The Edgenuity courses, the platform, I mean, the course is completely designed, completely electronic, and the students can just work through it at their own pace. They can get ahead if they want. They can finish a course and then start the next course, you know, if they've got multiple courses. So there's a lot of flexibility in that, and teaching our students to learn that way and manage their time is really a challenge. But we are really trying to work with the teachers of record on their end to help them know how to facilitate this kind of learning, as well as students on the other end of how I can reach out, because there's definitely a barrier there.
Okay, now help me understand this teacher of record.
Yeah.
If it's elementary, then they have one teacher.
So elementary is different than secondary.
Okay.
Good question.
That's what
So elementary, we have 2 elementary teachers. We may need to extend it to 3 because of the numbers that have increased, and we have a meeting tomorrow with those teachers of record to make that decision. But we have 2. We have basically a K3 teacher of record and a 4-6 teacher of record, and we kind of juggle that load and the grade levels based on the numbers of students in those grade levels. So because in elementary they're overseeing all of the content areas, and so those 2 teachers are overseeing all of them.
Okay, so K through 3, the teacher of record, they have everybody.
Yeah, so they would have so in the virtual classrooms usually they'll have larger caseloads than they would in the regular classrooms. So they do have a larger caseload, and it is basically after their hours, on the weekends, that kind of a thing. But they're available, you know, after school if parents want to call or students need to come in. We've had just a few days ago, one of the teachers of record called me and said, "Is it okay if I go down to this student's home? They don't speak very good English, and I really just need to help them through this lesson." And I said, "Absolutely, if you feel comfortable with that, you're fine to do that." And you know, that kind of support. The students really. In the elementary setting, I mean, the lessons in schools PLP are very explicit, and every lesson goes through the same process as far as there's modeling, there's teach it, there's practice it, assess it. There's one more in there, but anyway, it's a cycle for every lesson. And so once the students know how to work the program, they can pretty much, unless it's a content question, they or their parents can pretty much figure it out and keep going. We haven't had a ton of questions from the elementary because a lot of parents are able to help them.
I'm still trying to picture how this works. So one teacher of record at each school, say one at Blyden Elementary, one at Monticello, and they are every student at Blyden Elementary, for instance, contacts this one teacher.
It's just the Edgenuity.
No.
Well, if on option 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in elementary, these 2 teachers oversee certain grade levels in elementary.
Okay.
So you've got K2 or K3 and then 4-6. And so if the student is enrolled in a K2 or K3 class, they would contact that teacher of record if they have a concern. So those kids are all lumped under that one teacher, and the same thing for the upper grades. And so the teachers, when we enroll the students in option 3, we have an assurance form, and we have a form that we give the parents that has their login, and it also has on there who the teacher of record is and their contact information.
Okay, so is that teacher, are those teachers being paid more? I mean,
they're receiving a stipend.
Okay.
Yeah.
They have a bigger workload.
They have a bigger workload, and it's really outside of their work time for the most part.
Okay.
And yes, they're receiving a stipend to do that.
Okay, so they said, yes, I'll.
Yep. I'm willing to do that. I
Okay.
can make that work, and that's what we've done.
Okay, and then in secondary, they go to possibly several different teachers if they're in option 3.
Yeah,
They
depending
do
on the
that.
courses they're
Okay.
enrolled in.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you know what? If I could show you a visual when we have a break, and it'll make a lot more sense too. You can
Okay.
see kind of how they're organized.
All right, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else on the COVID? Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
If I remember right, last
yeah.
meeting,
Just a second, Steve.
if I
Just a second, Superintendent.
if I remember right, last board meeting, we didn't do away with option 2 in the Baja region. We just made it so that the school district decides who goes on to option 2.
It's for the purpose of quarantine.
And so I'm curious about enrollment statistics for how many students do we have on option 2 now, and many students are being supported?
So I can tell you just kind of briefly approximate numbers where we're at. We have 20 students that were quarantined yesterday at San Juan High, approximately 20 students. And we had upwards in the 80s at Monticello High a couple of weeks ago, but most of those have come back now. So the ones that we have out are mostly family related, like a parent tested positive, so the whole family is quarantined kind of a thing. They haven't been as school related as they were a couple of weeks ago. And we have we have very few quarantined at this time, but you're right, that is the purpose of option 2, is if they have to be quarantined, and that's the purpose, that's the reason we're having the teachers continue their Canvas courses.
So is that extra workload for the teachers manageable then, given the numbers of
Yeah, they and I think they expected that from the very beginning, and so it's minimal compared to what it was trying to do, 50, 60 kids in 7 courses at the high school in a 1-hour period after school trying to meet. I mean, just wasn't. But yes, they're feeling like at this point now, if we get to a point where those percentages, and we work with the health department, we have to quarantine a lot, we will probably just go to all virtual for a week or 2 or whatever they recommend, which would put the teachers back into one platform, all at one time. So if it got really not manageable, I think we would get to a point where we have to reevaluate the whole school.
Superintendent.
Yes. You ready for me to move on?
Yes, yeah.
I do have one more item I'd like to talk about with our COVID reentry plan. I did attach the High School Association recommendations for the winter sports and activities document, and I do want the board to remember that in our reentry plan we did say we will follow Utah High School Association guidelines and recommendations, and so that's what's presently in place. And I am still very much under the assumption and the direction that we will continue that. With that said, I want the board just to be aware of one discussion item that we spent a lot of time on in superintendent's meeting that I just want the board to be aware, and if you would like to provide any guidance or direction outside of what we're already under, which is to follow their guidelines, then you would have an opportunity to do so. And that is that in the new recommendations, they are proposing, they have not finalized them, they're still said this is kind of a draft that they will finalize after a few more conversations and a little more process, but they are proposing that they greatly limit the amount of spectators at the beginning of the winter sports season. And they're not exactly sure when they say the beginning. I don't know when they'll determine that it's far enough into it that they can adjust. But they're talking about limiting the capacity to any of our winter sports games to like 20 or 25%, or they're also talking about a possibility of changing it from a percent and just say that the participants can have 1 to 2 parents or guardians in attendance. And what they're looking at is to eliminate any type of a student body for at least the first part of the season. And I think they're looking at the possibility of that being the months of November and December, and then maybe in January they'll give it a look to see where we're at as a state, and we'll look at, and of course they're going to look at the different risk levels in the areas, if you're high risk, if you're moderate risk, or you're low risk, and those will play out as well. And you can see that in that document, but if you're in high risk, they're looking at very much controlling the amount of people that are in the gymnasium or wherever you might be having that. So I'm under the impression, and I just want the board to know that if that's what is adopted by the High School Association, that because we have already made the decision that we will follow their guidelines, that we will move forward following those guidelines, and we'll of course stay current with if we're in high or if we're in moderate or if we're in low risk, and we'll stay in check with where their guidelines say we should be doing. I did want to point out that this also will involve our fine arts type our theatrical type performances as well. We'll look at those as well and try to accommodate them. You know, the agreement that we have in place in our plan is that we're trying to facilitate the fine arts and the theatrical type activities, just as we are the Utah High School Association sports type activities. So we'll look at those kind of together and we'll go forward. But I wanted to draw your attention to it, that you can be aware that that's what very possibly could happen. And with us being in a very high rate right now, there is a chance we'll open up wrestling, boys and girls basketball, and those sports for winter, and have a very limited, maybe 25 to less, or maybe just parent capacity in our gyms. And if we do plays or any type of fine arts program, we will also probably keep the capacity of the audience in that same area of 25%, unless the board wants to give some kind of a different direction.
Okay, any comments? Okay. All right, let's go to number 8. Are you there?
That's me as well.
Pardon me?
Yeah, yes, I'm with you. I want to speak a little bit and come with a recommendation to the board. A recommendation of proposing a COVID-19 staff appreciation compensation package. This is something that has played out across the state, and I think the rationale behind this is that I think there's a couple of main points that play out in my mind behind my recommendation. One of those is, and there is a document on here that kind of shows, again, how did we do in our collective bargaining, our cost of living allowance for our salary increase. If you remember, we gave a 0.25%. And at the time, of course, we have always been trying to put everything we can, and it's very difficult to project where everything will fall. Even with today's audit, you can go back and see what is being carried over. But the thing that I think we need to keep in mind of is how are we doing in the overall picture? And I think there's a document on there that I am concerned, and I've expressed this in the past, that even when we make gradual improvements, we're struggling to stay competitive with the rest of the state. And you'll see that even in this year, when we gave a 0.25, it definitely did not even come close to the state average of what was done across the state. So that's always playing out in the back of my mind, is staying competitive, staying viable in competitive terms of recruitment, of retaining and sustaining our great workforce. But the second part that I think plays into this, and I think it's played across the state, is during this pandemic, in a time when there's so much uneasiness and so much unsettledness about the everyday routine of what we do in education, it really does take a toll mentally upon our workforce. I think they've been phenomenal, and I've continued to recognize what they do in all areas of the district. But there is no doubt in my mind I've never seen a more tense time with more anxiety and more concern. And I think though money doesn't change, though a compensation bonus does not change directly to any of the variables that we're dealing with, it goes a long way to recognize and to express appreciation and recognize what we see and acknowledge that what's being done across the district. And that can go a long way to making a difference with our morale and our mental health, just lowering our levels of anxiety and concern. I think it plays well. I think we again are in a financial situation where we can look at that. I would propose that we look at, some type of a compensation bonus package for our staff across the district. But I don't know if Kyle has anything to say to that, or if the board would have any further questions or would like me to go any deeper in any different direction. I'd certainly answer any questions that you might have.
Kyle, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, Superintendent, do you want me to kind of cover the two different options that we've possibly looked at up to this point and what those would cost?
Yeah, I think we can. I don't know that those are just, actually, I don't know those are the only two options, but those are two options that we've looked at, and they give us a ballpark figure. But I think I don't know that I want to characterize them as the only two options.
I would say no, then I think
Okay.
Superintendent's explained it.
All right, any questions?
Well, just what's being proposed other than just generics. So we're not gonna get specific.
Well, I can provide that. So two of the options that have been discussed, at least between Superintendent and myself, the first one being that of a flat bonus of $500 per employee, and then $100 per classified employee, and that total for that across the board for the entire district would be approximately $187,500. And then the second proposal was a 1% for each employee, as we've done in the past, and $100 per classified employee. So not a 1% for the classified, the $100 would be in place. So $100 for each option, at least for the classified employees, and you have either a $500 across the board or a 1% option for all of your employees, are the two that have been discussed. And the 1% is approximately $260,000 is what that would cost.
President,
Yes, Lucille?
I would just like to say that I agree with this bonus here that is being said, because I know a lot of our teachers and a lot of our staff, they've been coming in early, leaving late, donating a lot of their time, and all the stress that they've been going through during this pandemic. And I understand and totally agree to this and approve of this. So that's what I would like to say to that.
Matt's gonna talk for just a second.
Thank you. I just want to add a little context to this. Historically, we've had these conversations before, actually, at similar times. And Kyle can correct me if I'm wrong, because I didn't get a chance to really thoroughly go through that. But we just learned in our audit report that we rolled over close to 1.2, 876 went into general fund. When we look at that, and we look at what's comparable on that visual graph that we have, I would just encourage the board to do as much as they could. When I go and I meet with the association and I meet with teachers and I talk with teachers, I'm advocating that we are doing everything we can to provide that level of compensation and to express our appreciation. And I look at, like, Granite up there, 1% salary or $500 for hourly is what Granite did. Granite also gave a 5% cost of living. Now they're in a little bit different boat, but that provides some serious context. So I would certainly, I know we're limited and we have limited resources, but I would certainly advocate that whatever you can give would be greatly appreciated. And I don't think, and Kyle, slap me if I'm wrong, but 1.5% to salary and $500 to hourly wouldn't even spend half your $876,000 that you're rolling over. So just to give you some context, and I do appreciate everything the school board does, and I hate the fact that every time I'm up here I'm asking for more. I want you to know I appreciate you, and I appreciate the job you do. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Nelson, did you want to comment? I think we lost him. Nelson? We did. Did you have a comment real quick?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, wait. Did you have a comment?
I do support it as well, because you saw the numbers of Barbara's report of 20 to 40 hours extra teachers are doing, and also the mountain region schools are getting a lot of overwork. Well, not. I mean, those are just the evidence, but as well as throughout the whole district, everybody's doing more than what they can do for the education of our students. So that's my position. Thank you.
Okay, so when this will be an action item, when it comes up, whoever chooses to make that motion can either, I mean, there's kind of been two proposals thrown out. One, the base one was the 1%. Matt did kind of gear toward the 1.5 with the 500 per hourly employee. So that's another, so that will be an action item. Do you have a comment?
Yeah,
Good.
I do. First of all,
46 seconds. Sorry.
So I absolutely know, and I think and we dealt with some of the stress and overworking of at least teachers in our last meeting, but I appreciate everything that everybody has been doing to deal with all the mandates and things that have been pushed on us. I am concerned that we may have declining income in our school district in the future. We are highly taxed already, and part of the board's responsibility also is to look at where that money comes from and the amount of tax dollars that people are paying into the system. Now, in the past, we've had unusual amount of snow removal that has cost the district extra money, and we would hope for that problem this year because we need it so badly. We've had carbon monoxide things, we've had other things that are unexpected that has costed our school district money, so I'm always cautious about saying we've got extra money and that maybe, in the county as a whole, maybe we have some stress on the taxpayer as well as stress on who are parents and who are grandparents, and it's part of a whole picture that we as a board need to consider if we can sustain this kind of if we can sustain our current salaries that we have and spend money that we have in savings. If we were to have something come up that is extra. So anyway, I think that those kinds of things need to be considered, and maybe today is maybe too soon to make a decision that maybe we could do an action item if that's the case next board meeting and consider our options. But I really do know the amount of work that everybody has done. But I also know the stress on the county as a whole and what it's done, what COVID's doing to our county, and where that money is going to continue to come from to replenish. So anyway, okay, now I'm finished.
Thank you. Okay, so that is, like I said, it's listed as an action item, and we'll just, when we get there, we can discuss it again. Okay, superintendent, for the USG proposal.
Yes, number 9 is just a follow-up and an opportunity for the board to discuss more in depth the proposal that came to our board from Christian Olson, provost from USU Eastern, last board meeting, as he presented a proposal to acquire some land at Monument Valley to put in a permanent facility. So I just did not know what the board, how they wanted to, if they need more time to discuss this further. I would draw your attention to a letter that is attached there. This is a letter of support that I did receive, and I wanted to make sure the board had seen, from the Algedo chapter president, James Atakai, and that it's been officially ratified through the Algedo chapter house. So wanted you to make sure that you were aware that that action had taken place. But I really don't have anything specific other than I just want you, if needed, to have an opportunity to discuss anything that you might want to in this regard.
So I think we I'm gonna open the floor up for a little bit of discussion about how we kind of feel about whether we're kind of supporting this, the direction we're headed. So, does anyone want to comment at the floor?
Well, I'll start out by saying I'm, absolutely supportive of, Utah State having a facility down there. One of the things that occurred to me as I read this letter is, I always wonder if we're going to run out of land with all the, requests that we get to use our land and, or trust land, school district land, and so I'm wondering, with the support of the Navajo Nation, if there's a possibility of using Navajo Nation land for this facility too, is possibly an option. Or just where is the best place if we do use trust lands, or the land we have right now for education.
Ron, did we look at a map a few times ago
Yeah.
where they would put
Yeah.
that? So, okay.
I'm currently working on a drawing with that depicts all the different backup areas for septic systems and everything. I'll be ready by next month. I wasn't able to.
So by next month you could have all that, that'd be helpful.
Yep.
So if we could see
Long-term
exactly.
capital planning and what we have lined
Yeah.
up potentially for the property, that'll be ready by next month.
Okay. Lucille or Nelson, did you have any comments? Steve?
We were looking at the agreements that were signed when we originally acquired that land. I was looking closely at that, and the stipulation said that it has to be used for education purposes. It didn't say primary, secondary education, it just said education. And I think USU fits within those parameters easily. And so, in my opinion, or I guess I'm in favor of it initially.
Okay.
And I did confirm that with the state attorney general's office as well.
Keep Steve speaking loudly.
So, did you hear Steve?
No, Steve needs to speak just a little more loud if he can.
Steve, scoot up.
That's as loud as I get.
Hey,
Get you a
that's
megaphone.
very good. Thank you.
I was just saying, when we went over the agreements, when we were, about a year ago or so, when we were doing the UNHS, or that trade, looking at the agreements, it said that the stipulation was that it needs to be used for education. It didn't narrow it down to primary education, secondary education. It just said education. So the proposal that we're coming across here, I think it fits within the parameters of the stipulations that were put on that land, and I'm supportive of the request initially.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so that is an action item if we wanna proceed, or like Kyle said, he will have the attached documents of where that would be located and more specific information next month. Superintendent, is USU under a deadline?
No, I do not believe that there's a very pressing deadline at this point. He has not communicated that.
Okay. Okay, do you wanna go to number 10?
I do, and this, number 10 is, for your information, I thought you might be interested to kind of stay current with, we've gone through this new change in fee waiver law, and we've developed spend plans, and of course you've been through that process now as a board and approved those, and we've now gone through a year where we're seeing those plans play out in action in our schools, and we will continue to learn and monitor and adjust, but for the most part I think we're seeing some great success. And now we've had the first opportunity to report on what we saw last year in spending our fee waiver money, and what did we actually spend, and how were those dollars allocated. Now, I want to make sure that I point out very boldly that last year we had a couple of variables that played out that distort these numbers a little bit, but they still, I think, are helpful to us. The first variable was, I think we got off to a slow start a little bit with our parents in some areas of the district, that they did not, I think, totally have faith that, or the expectation that would we really charge fees if they were not approved as a fee waiver student. And there was a little bit of education that went forth and was done. So I think some of our parents came on a little later into the game, into fall activities, and finally got their paperwork in and got on board with fee waivers before, but they might have tried the water just a little bit there. And then the other major variable that played out in this report is that, of course, all of spring sports were canceled. So that definitely took a big portion of what fee waiver money would have been paid out. But if you open up that document, you get a pretty clear picture of the fees that were charged for the entire district, the fees that were charged that were waived. So you'll notice that this, the total number of students is 3,073. Total number of students given fee waivers was 569. And the total amount of student fees waived that the district did provide, did pick up the cost of those fees, was $83,790. Now, we had projected that might go as high as over $200,000. And I'm not so sure in a normal year where it might go. Maybe it's never going to get quite as high as $200,000. I don't know for sure. But we do know that we did pay out $83,790. And then we also know how much we charged in total to all students. Parents paid most of this, but it was $428,447 total dollars were charged in fees. That would include every meal being charged at a $10 rate. Even for our non-fee waiver students, we calculate that at $10. And every motel, I think, was calculated at a $30 rate. So I just felt like that this is probably an annual report that the board will want to stay current with and kind of watch in the next couple of years. This year, of course, is going to be another very distorted year with our river region not having any fall sports, and we're not sure on winter sports. So this is definitely, again, going to be another distorted year where the data that we report from this year next fall is, again, going to be very distorted. But I still think we need to watch these numbers and kind of stay close to what's happening in the area of fee waivers. So I share that. If there's any questions, either Kyle or myself, Kyle did put all the numbers through this, Mr. Hostler. So if he wants to speak to anything there, Kyle, go ahead and speak to it. If there's any questions, either Kyle or myself will try to answer those.
Yeah, I'll chime in there, Superintendent. One of the topics that we actually discussed last week in our UASBO meeting was the reality that the Utah State Office of Education is now going to designate specific funds to track these different fees. So general curricular, co-curricular, and extracurricular, they will want identified by specific functions and programs. And so the state is still compiling and working closely with business administrators to give us that structure and rigor on how they want those categorized. Again, this year we were able to use a spreadsheet that we had generated in-house to categorize these expenses. And I will say that a large consensus of the business administrators and school districts throughout the state did not go into this fine of detail, but simply submitted that line item 8 for the total fees, and that was it for this year, where it's not a requirement this year. Next year it will be. So again, there's a lot of things that we will put into place and continue to work on from here moving forward to ensure that we have those tracked appropriately in those different categories.
I have a question. If you go down, since they're not numbered, if you go down on the right side to $175,209, it says total dollar amount of fees charged for curricular activities, and that's the number 175,209. The next line says the exact same thing, total dollar amount of fees. Oh no, waived. Okay, waived. Sorry. Okay, answered my own question, reading it more carefully. So those were the ones waived, those were charged. Okay.
Okay.
So I have a question.
Go ahead.
The word charged, is that gross fees or just those fees that the student is expected to pay?
Expected to pay.
So
based on
this part and this part, both of them together, the total fees.
Correct.
Okay. Any more questions? All right.
Make one more comment.
Okay.
If I can just make one more comment, I would really like to thank the board for your work in the fee waivers area. I'd like to thank schools, ADs, principals, coaches across the district. But I can say without a doubt for the first time that I've had to fill out a fee waiver report for years, and this was the first time without any anxiety or hesitancy, I was able to just mark the yes box and be proud of saying, yes, we are in compliance. There was no gray area in my mind, and that we're in a very good spot because of the work that we've done to systematically put in place all the way through our schools. Kyle's worked very closely with our financial secretaries and have a report that's generating monthly. And we have a very good record now for what we're charging, where the fee waivers are going. And when it came time to report, it was definitely a more pleasant experience this year. So just express appreciation to the board and everyone that's been involved in that process.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brewer, would you and Kyle like to report on the internet project?
Short and sweet.
Short and sweet. We're continuing to build. One thing, the biggest development is Kyle finished up the contract for the River Region Land Access Project. I have been in every chapter meeting, including TOYOC, for resolutions of support from the community, and we're starting outreach to our parents and to our end users. We have about 500 end of the line nodes, which we haven't started installing yet, but we have started building the backbone of everything, including we've got towers that we're building in the Montezuma Creek area, 2 there, and 1 in the Monument Valley area. Next month I'll have a little better map to kind of show you this. It's all been engineered and designed, and it's really going quite well. We have a company that is going to help with the tower construction. That'll be part of that fee, and they're subcontracting with some of the with a business down out of Montezuma Creek to help build those towers. We feel like we have about 50 towers to build that are the smaller towers. We feel like we can knock those out in about 2 weeks. The bigger towers are going to take a little longer, but we feel like then we should be able to start doing housing installs fairly quickly after that, and should be able to have 3 or 4 crews that will be able to move through and work with those families. Kyle's made a really nice contract, which includes information for the homeowners. We also have a lot of different literature and pamphlets that we try to disperse, get to the chapters and get to people so they understand what's happening. The big thing, as I've always said about this project, is that it will sustain education beyond COVID, and that's one of the really exciting things about it, because we're using about 50% of our capacity with our technology if a kid doesn't have connectivity at home. So this will be one of those things that will give us that power to continue to serve students better.
Okay. Awesome. Any questions, Kyle?
I'll just finish up and tag on that I just want to thank Aaron and his team for everything they've done with this. I can honestly say that from the day of last board meeting up to this board meeting, with the exception of the last 3 to 4 days, I was on the phone for multiple hours with our attorney working through this contract to ensure that it's going to provide the best channel for us to be able to do exactly what we need without any roadblocks, because the sunset on this money, the $3.9 million, is December 30th. We've actually been designated a liaison from the State Office of Education, who we will be meeting with weekly, hopefully on Tuesday with our other meetings that we'll be communicating with the other subcontractors. And we have expressed to them that we are going to do everything within our power to spend that $3.9 million before December 30th, meaning we will have all of the equipment, anything that we need to finish this project by then. but again, looking at a service contract to ensure that this equipment is upkept for the next 5 years is something we're still looking into for financial help and assistance. And we do have some state legislators and representatives that are helping us to evaluate those options. But on top of that, understanding that the district, not wanting to have more onus than we need to, understanding that it may come back to possibly impacting our capital dollars to help with the implementation and infrastructure of getting these devices installed at the different locations. So that's something we've planned for accordingly in the capital dollars, but again, we're hoping to spend as much of that 3.9 and put all of that on the grant that we possibly can, but there is the possibility with that tight deadline that we will have to pitch some money in to ensure that this is seen all the way through January, February, March if needed. But again, the hope is to spend that entire 3.9 to get as much done as we possibly can. So the contract is on here for an action item, and we would greatly appreciate your support on that. It is signed by Solitech, and so with board's approval, we would sign that, and we'll unleash the horses. We'll be running full blast. So.
Okay, so it's a really long contract. It's a lot, and so is it timely today to?
Yes, we need to get this finalized as fast as we can because Solitech at this point has almost $800,000 to $900,000 worth of equipment that they're ready to ship, and I have told them that we will not issue them a check until we have a finalized formal contract. So that's what this represents. Without this contract, we'd be delayed even further, and the governor's office, unfortunately, was about a month and a half to get us the funds from the state office to our office where we could actually spend them. And again, there's been a lot of push to try to spend money and sign money from San Juan School District, and we haven't done that, not wanting to do any financial disbursements without having a finalized contract, and so we finally reached
We
the
just
point.
wanted to make sure we didn't, get out there with a bunch of money that.
And then can you say it's not fully in place, but can you build it? I
So-
mean, can you buy this stuff and let it sit?
Yes,
Use the
so,
money?
the theory behind it is if we can start building the backbone stuff,
Uh-huh.
we can put something on a home for a couple $100s. To build a tower is more expensive, and the bigger the tower, the more expensive, and so that's kind of how we're gonna prioritize our work, build our backbone first so that all those pieces are in place, and if there are little one-off spurs here and there, then we should
Right.
do it.
Okay.
Take care.
So I have another question. So the people that we have employed already before this tower ever came up, I mean, we don't have extra employees that are helping to do this, is that correct?
Right.
And so there's concern in the community of people who are possibly, or word on the street is that we are overworking employees, that what is San Juan School District doing to some of our employees by adding all this extra work because the work we already had didn't go away. And so anyway, that's something that I would like to,
That's why we want the contract signed, so that Solitech can take over the general contracting role. We just haven't felt like we wanted to start paying people without something in place to save that. But yes, our
so that
guys.
will help eliminate the things that.
Yes, so
Hearing.
Chris and Wesley will move more to a supervisory and an inspection type role, making sure things are done right and not doing the actual building.
Okay.
But yes, we have been using them quite a lot, extensively.
And that is planned for some of those dollars in that allocation to help with some of those extra hours and extra time that they have been putting in.
Yeah.
Questions, Lucille, Nelson? Anything else to watch? Okay, we're gonna.
No, I don't have any questions, but I do want to appreciate Aaron and his crew doing all they can. And I know it's taken a lot of toll on district staff as well, but we're obligated to get these students educated one way or another with this pandemic. So I hope things work out for us, and we can get some other contractors to help too as well. So just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelson.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Kyle.
This is short and sweet.
Good.
This contains the board training information that provides the link and the location for where you can go to do the annual audit training Again, that has to be done once every 4 years for board members, and I can bring this back and we can revisit it or go through it a little bit more in depth if you'd like it at a different board meeting. But then I've also included on there something that I feel would be appropriate for January, is the ethics pledge, and that's something that I can bring before the board for signature for approval in January. So that attachment on there as well is there as an example to show you what that contains or what language is in that.
So, we as board members need to go to the link and do the training on our own, correct?
Correct. That would be individual per board member.
By December 31st?
Whenever in the next 4 years, starting a new election period, you'll basically have the next 4 years to go and complete it, correct? After January.
After January, okay, got it.
You'll have 4 years to go in and complete that. It's once every 4 years.
Did we do that?
No, it's brand new.
Oh.
Okay.
Did you understand that? I mean, did you guys hear that, I should say? Okay, all right. Let's go, Mr. Kais. Proposed calendar.
So attached to board docs is a 2021-2022 calendar. This meets what is traditionally our board has tried to do as far as starting after the fair and ending before Memorial Day and having relatively equitable quarters. So this is not an action item tonight, it's just an information. Typically, as we move the next couple of months, we will see people asking for this. So kind of a line in the sand, look it over, and it'll be back next month for more discussion.
Okay, any questions for Matt?
I have a question. I know that some secondary class, in secondary, generally it doesn't really affect elementary schools, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, Mr. Porter. But the first quarter being only 40 days, and then the last two being 48 is, a week and a half of school days. So say driver's ed, I can't remember what other classes. Is that difference a concern to some of our classes in secondary?
I don't think, I guess the correct answer is I don't know. But this is not very, from what we've done in the past, it's very similar, and they haven't brought it forward. So, Julie?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, one of the biggest challenges in the past with the calendar has been concurrent enrollment and coordinating with the college schedule. So what we've pretty much done is, college kids are just really, the kids who wanna take those courses are just really good now at they follow the college schedule for college and the school schedule for school, and they just work it out. So it hasn't been, even with the COVID and things like that, we said, if you're gonna take a current enroll class, just be aware, the schedules are a little different, and they just work it out, it's been fine. So as far as, the courses we teach in the district, I don't anticipate like driver's ed, because they pretty much just follow our school schedule, whatever it is.
Yeah.
They do have hours, they do have seat
Yeah,
hours.
that's what I'm referring to.
Driver's
It's
ed
just
does-
that seat
They do
time,
have
and
seat
so
hours, and Tracy,
or-
they can work that out.
or classes that have curriculum that they say it's really hard to fit into 40 days,
Yeah.
and then I've got 48 days on the other. That's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, and I think we would just have to look at that and adjust, and we're gonna, Christy and I talked about this today, we'll make sure and put this on our agendas with our principals this week, so that they can talk with their staff and we can get some feedback, so that you can have some of that as well.
All right.
Thank you.
And is that true of elementary? It doesn't, 40
Yeah,
days.
elementary's pretty
Okay.
good. Yep.
Okay. Superintendent, you want to do the last one? 14?
Yes. And this one, I've asked President Mon if I could put this one on here, probably more for me than anyone, but if you would just entertain me or let me work through some concerns that I've kind of worked through in the closed session guidelines and law. I wanted to review it a little bit. I think for the most part, I think as a board, we certainly have a good understanding of what we go in closed session for, how we get into closed session, what vote has to be taken, what needs to be recorded, what's not recorded. Those are some very specific guidelines that I think we've been very on top of and very well educated on and complied very well with. The thing that got me thinking a little bit and that I couldn't really clarify in my own mind, so I've done a little research and a little work with, was it does talk a lot lot in our training books about going into a closed session to have a session of strategy, a strategy session for maybe for purchasing real property or for collective bargaining or for litigation. And I started to maybe be a little bit vague on what is involved in a session of strategy, a strategy session. And, you know, I think sometimes I've heard or I've been led to believe that, you know, can you make a decision or can you not make a decision in closed session? Can you somewhat poll how people feel? Can you not poll how people feel? Anyway, I just did a little research on this, thought I would share. I kind of started to ask quite a few superintendents and even reached out to some legal advice on where's the boundaries for a board as far as a strategy session to make decisions in a closed session. Do they make decisions? Do they poll how people feel? Do they express where they're at in their opinion on a certain topic? And what I've learned from gathering information, and if this generates any kind of a discussion, I'd certainly welcome that. But I've learned that what I learned from many, or visiting with a couple of superintendents and some legal advice, is that a strategy session can include when decisions are made. Decisions could be made to make a decision as far as what's the next step. Maybe a superintendent or a business administrator is empowered to write a letter or to make a visit or to do any of those. Those are certainly decisions that can be made in terms of a strategy session that will help the group navigate towards a final decision on the topic of which you have gone into closed session to make a final decision on, which has to be made in open board meeting. But anyway, and I just worked through that in my own mind of where does this boundaries lie as far as what you can do in a closed session. I don't know if there's any comments out there, any concerns. Maybe I'm the only one that had a little vagueness in my mind. And this is probably a cold topic where you haven't had an opportunity to put much thought into it, but I just did a little research in that area and wanted to clarify that in my mind, what a strategy session does mean. And it does mean that you can talk strategy, you can make decisions along the way to helping you make a formal decision in an open meeting on the topic in which you're discussing or that's taking you into a closed session. Does that make any sense? Is it confusing as can be?
No, thanks. We
Clear as mud.
appreciate you looking into that. Thank you. Any questions?
No, well, I was just gonna say, it's always a little bit grayish, and we have to just do our best not to get into the red on it, I think.
Okay, we are going to adjourn and, stop till 6, and we will be back for public comment and our recognition awards. Okay,
Awesome.
thank you.
We'll call back into 898 at 6 o'clock. Thanks.
Okay. Yes, well, I assume she's coming in.
Let's talk about it. I'll make sure it's not an option. The one thing it does do, actually, it,
And then I'm not sure how Nelson's doing the other one. I guess it might be a course thing, so.
So I'll add that. Is an option for them?
I don't, I can't make
You don't say anything in the comment? Would you rather not?
It doesn't matter either way.
Is it okay for me to?
So the board should not answer your questions.
Well, I'm not gonna.
Thanks, Rich. Yes.
Sure.
Technology part throws us off a little bit. So we welcome you to this portion of our board meeting, and we're going to have our recognition awards. So Stephanie, would you like to come forward, please?
Woo! Yeah!
Yeah! Hey, you got this one.
Hey, that's right. Where do you want me?
Just come to the front, buddy.
Okay.
Steve Blackman.
So I guess these are not named, are they?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Superintendent brings those down.
All right. Stephanie Turk has been nominated and is receiving the San Juan Squared Award, the San Juan Sweet Job Award for the month. First nomination was by Sherry Pugh at Blanding Elementary School. She says, Steph has put in countless hours getting the PBIS reward store ready for the students. The kids are excited about doing good things to earn rewards points, and even more excited about seeing what they can buy at the store with those points. Way to get BES students motivated, Steph. The next one who nominated you was Jay Porter. Jay says, Stephanie has had to tackle our lunch and breakfast amidst all of her other duties. She has done very well in being flexible and persevering through the daily changes. She is very supportive of our teachers and keeps things moving in a positive direction. And the last nomination was from Jerry Montella. Jerry says, Stephanie has been a great addition to our staff at BES. She works hard to keep things organized and our staff motivated. I don't know what we would do without her and everything she does. COVID has certainly challenged us all, but Stephanie has stepped up to bat and hit the ball out of the park. Congratulations.
Okay.
So we're just waiting to get this.
No, we're good. I'll take it off. Maybe. I might take it off. It's all good.
Okay. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Gotcha.
Here's a picture, man. Thank you.
Stop in your phone call.
Dawn, are you on with us?
Don Gandy, are you on the telephone call?
Okay. We have another one, but he is obviously not able to make that connection, so we'll just either wait till he gets back on, or we may even push it somewhere next month. Maybe we can't get a hold of him, so.
We can ask him maybe at the end of the citizens' comments, we'll see if he gets back on, and if he doesn't, then we'll move on.
Okay, so I have two comments, and then Eva has a few that she will read, so I'll give you 3 minutes. We'll set the timer, and you're welcome to come up. And the first one will be Julie Sampson. So if you'll come forward, and do you mind pulling your mask down so everyone can hear you?
Yeah.
When you're right up here, thank you.
Okay. Hi, good evening. My name is Julie Sampson, and I'm here as a parent of students in Bluff Elementary and ARL. I live south of Bluff at White Rock Community, which is the closest on the reservation to Bluff, the town of Bluff. I just wanted to let you know that I feel that I represent some parents because they have talked to me about this issue, but I do want to address the COVID-19 reentry and also more specifically, the option 2 that is, I don't know, probably still up in the air at this point in time as far as completely eliminating it or what have you. I'm not too sure, but what I'm doing here is I want to let you know that option 2 was a really good option. It integrated students from down south into this community. We do have the option of going to Whitehorse High School, but I know a lot of parents do not feel comfortable, either due to them being an alumnus of the school or just being a part of the community for so long, or even just the convenience of working in blending and bringing your child up here, or knowing that your child is up here with you when you're at work. Being that option 2 is eliminated, it makes it a little difficult to be a part of that. And I think a big part of parents not feeling included was because they were just broadsided with this decision that was made. You either go here or you go there. You don't have any input or any room to kind of talk about what the issue is. I know that they addressed that, but it was more like a day they were given. I was given a day. I was able to stretch it out to later in the week on Wednesday to be able to put my kids completely in option 3. And I did this because we have issues in our family that may not be huge, but they are important to me. I have children who have asthma. My husband has asthma, and it's really, really, it's significant enough that we do have medication and we do see a doctor regularly for it. What I would like to see is option 2 brought back. I probably won't participate in it because it's so much moving around from option 3, which is Edgenuity, back to the school, but that is just for my family alone. Other parents would love to see option 2 brought back because it gave them more of a connection to specific teachers for that particular curriculum or for that particular class, but it also made them feel a part of that particular school, which they feel they were pushed out of. It also keeps them on task with a lot of the curriculum that they'll be reintroduced to, as far as, you know, going back to the quarters or what have you. And I do offer up a solution for teachers to possibly take Friday off, because our students from down south are bussed in on the regular every Friday for only 30 minutes in each class. And I think it's like 4 or 5 classes within that amount of time. And then they're bussed back home. Why don't we just, for the remainder of the year, take away Friday as a student in the school day, but keep it as like a work day for teachers? And so that could possibly be something that we can look at. But I know that the teachers are feeling really strained because they have a standard to keep up. And I feel maybe it would be a good idea to let these teachers know that this is an unusual year and this is an unusual time, and we may be able to get back to normal possibly next fall. But at this point in time, it's just not possible. So these are avenues we can explore and possibly even implement in the future if it works really well. So that was just
Thank
my
you.
spiel.
Thank you. And then you do not want a response back?
I leave that open to you, because as the board, this is your judge. You know, this is where you're at. That you know best, and I just kind of offer up that solution because I don't want to just complain, but I do feel like maybe that would be an option for now.
Okay. So if I could at least have you leave an email or a phone number, so
Sure.
if the superintendent chooses to get back with you,
Okay.
you remark no response, but I will have you leave that for
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Rich Monson, you want to come forward?
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So a couple things that I wanted to talk about really quick. I've talked to Matt a little bit, and you gave this to them, right? So one of the things that we talked about is possibly changing the fall break from the Friday to the Monday. As a teacher, we usually get a lot of the kids gone. We didn't see it this year because we had that work day, but it would also do a couple.
Can we have whoever's having the background noise mute their microphone, please? Good?
Yep,
Okay.
keep going, sorry.
So it would also help, I know that there's concern about the first term being a little bit shorter. It would add 1 day to that term. So that's something, as the association president, I've had members talk to me about and say, is there any way we could get the Monday out instead of the Friday out? So if I would like the board to possibly consider that for a couple reasons there. The other thing was I wanted to express gratitude from the association, from teachers, for the district administration, their efforts to put together this COVID bonus. It means a lot to us. We look at morale boosters, and there's different things that they're trying to do, and I think this helps. Obviously, we can't just make it all better and make it all go away, and it's going to take work and effort, but this I think is one thing, and I would be willing. I know they're looking at a couple different proposals, but as a teacher sitting at a higher end, they're considering numbers. If there was a way, so because I'm up here, I don't make more than these teachers who are working as hard as me down here. If we had one amount that we gave to teachers and we did that way, I think from my perspective, I would appreciate that, to be able to share with all the teachers that we want to be considered equal with everybody, because we feel like we're all doing a lot of work, and so I express gratitude to the district administration for their efforts, and I would appreciate, your guys' consideration in that, and I appreciate all that you guys do. I know that you've been placed with challenges right now, and trying to wade through all of this has been a tough deal on your part, and I appreciate all that you guys do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Could I just quickly, is switching from a Friday to a Monday, because Monday's the different, and we have kids miss school anyway?
Right.
Okay.
And
yeah.
that seems like when we do the Friday is because it's right around that deer hunt, and we usually, when we have school, we have a lot of kids gone on that first Monday anyway. And as we're looking to start school and to be as professional with our time, as beneficial to our kids, it really helps to have them there. And I think if we had that Monday, we might get more back on Tuesday.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because I had people mention that to me too, and I actually forgotten about it. But we have employees who would like that day off to help, and kids who. So yeah, thank you.
And like I say, it does add that extra day onto the term if we're trying to get.
I'm confused about how to add the day if we swap.
So if our first term ends on the Friday, then it's what, 40 days, so that would give us 41 days.
Okay.
So anyway.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, here you go.
The first emailed comment is from Kit Mance, employee at San Juan School District with CTE. He said, as I listen to the streamed broadcast of the board meeting, I just want to add that the San Juan School District Adult Education Program will be located at the USU site at Monument Valley. I believe that we could double or triple our number of adult education students seeking high school diplomas at the Monument Valley High School area if this facility is built and appropriately staffed. Thank you, Kit Matz. And the second emailed comment is from Kate Gobble. She says, Dear board members, I know that the ongoing health situation has resulted in a very large number of changes. Some of them, while irritating, are mere inconveniences. Some are not. I have 3 students at Monticello Elementary School and am on the community council. Something that I have been concerned with for a while is the amount of time children are given for lunch. They are given 15 minutes from the time they enter the cafeteria to the time they have to be done. I believe this is based on current health recommendations. I don't think this is enough time. Many days my kids come home from school starving and hangry. While sometimes it is an issue of their own making, like they were too busy talking to eat, or forgot to pack a lunch, most of the time it's because there's not enough time to finish their food. I've spoken with teachers and other parents, and many of them share the same concern. The teachers, staff, and food service workers are doing an exceptional job trying to feed and educate our kids in an uncertain and ever-changing climate. I have nothing but the highest respect for everyone at Monticello Elementary. This issue is not really their fault, though, and goes beyond their reach because they're just following protocols. I'm sure you are aware that lack of adequate healthy food can cause a number of issues. Some of those are inability to concentrate, more frequent sickness, slower recovery from sickness, behavior problems, and poor performance in school. That's just the tip of the iceberg. The problem isn't that the schools are not feeding the children, because they are. The problem is that the current protocols don't give students time to eat. Lack of adequate nutrition over an entire school year is as large a problem as the one the protocols were being designed to address. For some students, the meal at the school may be their only one for the day. I respect and understand the concerns for the ongoing pandemic. However, these kids need longer to eat their lunch and/or breakfast. The required solution being forced on our school is going to cause long-term problems. I request the protocols be re-examined to give students time to actually eat their meals. Thank you for your attention and work at balancing all the demands on this unpredictable year. Kate. And Dawn.
Do they only get 15 minutes?
No. So they should have,
Does she want to come up? Does she come up? And Dawn is on the line now.
So they should definitely have as much time as they need to finish their meals. The social distancing guidelines are, without your mask for 15 minutes. We try to, that's one of the mitigation protocols that was put in place with the reentry plan, but definitely we want students to be able to stay. They should be able to linger and finish their meals. So I think that's just something that I need to follow up with Mrs. Olson and just find out for sure, because that's not the intent in any way. And if students are feeling that way and parents are feeling that way, I appreciate knowing that. So we'll just look into it and figure out. But there's not a 15-minute time limit for lunch.
So if you could follow up with her and
Yeah,
see
for
if that
sure.
could make sure that's correct.
Yeah.
Or the misunderstanding, whatever it may be.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So
Thank you.
can I ask real quick, since we have Lennon Elementary here too, is that maybe a perception from parents as well that kids are rushed through? Do you know?
We haven't had any complaints.
Okay.
We give about 20 minutes and then they're released, but if they're not finished, they just sit and eat. We don't kick them out of the lunchroom or anything like that.
Okay, and is that from the time, she mentioned from the time they come in
Yeah.
to the time they leave, and so they don't necessarily have a plate by then, is that accurate?
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
But kids are allowed at most schools to
And
stay
students
and
may
eat.
feel pressure. I mean, that's the kind of thing that I need to look into and just make
Okay.
sure that,
When the kids are running out too,
and
because recess is next.
So,
Okay. So
So
you have
thank you.
slower and faster eaters, so.
exactly.
Okay, so if you look into that.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
All right. And then, Dawn, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. So,
Hello, all.
hello.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry about this.
No problem. So, I'm going to read your nomination. Can you hear me? Good.
Yeah, I can hear you
Okay.
fine.
So Don is at Monument Valley High School, and it says Don doesn't just go the extra mile, but goes an extra 100 miles. He is an innovator and is willing to do whatever it takes to support student learning. He genuinely cares about each student in the school and his Monument Valley team. We are so lucky to have Don as a teammate at Monument Valley. That was nominated by Christy Fitzgerald. And then you have one more. Don goes above and beyond to make the learning environment fun and engaging for all the teachers and staff at Monument Valley High School. He has implemented some great ideas to encourage positivity and encouragement when the days and weeks get tough. Thanks for all you do, Don. And you were nominated by Rebecca Barr.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. So
Thank you, Don.
we have your award, and we're looking at it, and it's really nice, and you will get it.
No worries.
But
I
thanks for
appreciate it.
joining us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, it's an honor, and I
Take off your
appreciate
mask.
being able to be here, so thank you again.
I was gonna say, take off your mask and take a selfie.
Okay, you don't want that picture, it's ugly.
Thank you so much.
All right, take care, everyone. Be safe.
Okay. We need to, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I need to ask Ron a question real quick. Sorry. Superintendent.
Yes, I am here.
So, number one on possible action items.
Do you want this on?
Yeah. Oh, yep.
So,
But to really move forward.
Unless there's a decision or direction to accept an offer or to pursue
yeah, we're gonna have to have that on the action item.
okay.
We are. So, okay, we're gonna go to the consent agenda and then we'll go into closed session, so. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Still Cody motion?
Huh?
I'll second Nelson.
Okay. Yeah, and Nelson second. Any, discussion?
Is it appropriate to ask
No.
about a particular check?
Yes. Steve has a question. Go right ahead.
We paid $180 some odd thousand to Summit Partners. I was interested in what that was for.
Summit Partners, I believe, isn't Summit one of our technology providers, Aaron?
Yeah, Summit Partners is one of our technology providers. We wrote a grant to help us handle the traffic that we're going to get from the new project, and we bought 2 appliances for that that Jared is installing to replace our iBoss, and so that we're filtered, and we can build a firewall with the new program. But it was part of the broadband grant and connectivity grant that was some extra COVID money.
They're on state contract.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay. I need a motion to go into closed session for the discussion of purchase, exchange, or lease of real property.
I move to go in a closed session to discuss strategies for the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property.
So we have a motion by Steve,
Second?
okay. Roll call. Lucille and Nelson, why don't you start the roll call?
So Cody here.
Nelson?
Nelson Yellowman. Yes.
Steve Black, yes.
Lori Mon, yes?
Mary Shelley, yes.
Okay. So we will go into, okay, hearing there's no motion, we'll move to number 2. COVID-19 student reentry plan, next steps. Do we have any next steps?
I think there's some things that we didn't discuss last month and even this month that are some small things we can do next month.
So motion. Okay, hearing none, we will go to number 3. COVID-19 2020 appreciation compensation. I need a motion.
Lucille Cody, motion.
Okay, say the motion, will you?
Okay. Lucille Cody, motion to approve appreciation compensation for teachers and staff.
For the for
So,
Rich
Lucille-
Watson's suggestion as the association
Wait.
president.
So, Lucille,
Yeah.
do you know what compensation you would like? There were several that were thrown out there, or do we want to talk about it generally and then?
Yeah.
Make your motion, let's discuss it, and then we may have to re-motion that, what we would like to do.
Okay.
So I have a motion by Lucille. Is Ron even on?
Yeah, Ron's on.
Yeah, yes, I'm on.
Is Nelson on? I don't think Nelson's on. Hold on.
Do we not have Nelson?
No.
Is that
I'm here.
Still, let's see.
Oh, he's there. He
He's
just
there.
You could open it up for another motion.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so now we have discussion to go through that. Nelson, do you or Lucille want to start that discussion? Nelson.
I'll start it. Can I start it?
Yeah.
I would like to do the compensation package that includes I believe it's every salary employee gets the same amount of $500, because we have first-year teachers who have worked extra hard, just like the teacher who's been working for 25 years. You didn't have to work. I mean, it wasn't based on your year. Everybody has really stepped it up and worked very, very hard. And Rich Monson's the association president, and that is what he suggested, even though he's at that high end and would make a lot more. I think that's an equitable way of doing it. I think it puts everybody in the same, it draws that together with the people at the schools and the district office, administration versus first-year teacher, all across the board. I just think it's a really practical and fair way to do that.
Okay. Nelson or Lucille or Steve?
Administration, more specifically, Mary got this from Kyle, was recommending a $500 one-time bonus.
Sorry.
He's recommending a $500 one-time bonus to all employees except for classified and $100 for classified. So it was recommended for the fixed dollar amount.
Is what?
Yes.
That was one of the recommendations.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear all of that. Kind of low.
Sorry.
So what administration was recommending,
Well, only
one of
Rich,
the
right?
options. What's that?
Only Rich is recommending that.
No, that's what, one of the two
Oh.
options that Kyle has
Oh.
specified, and I presume it's superintendent as well, was to provide a one-time $500 bonus for all employees except for classified and $100 for classified.
Okay. So that's another option. Lucille or Nelson?
That's the same option.
Yeah,
That's the only option.
augmenting what
that
Mary
we-
just said.
Is that the one?
Would you get somebody to read the third option? I'm having a hard connection on my phone.
So Nelson, the option that was presented by Rich Monson was a $500 straight across the board for all salaried employees, and then $100 for hourly as a one-time. But one of the things the superintendent and Matt brought up was to do, like when you look to the graph, a 1%, but I just want to throw this out there, that prior to COVID, we were going to do a 3%. And when you looked at the 3%, because of COVID and legislation, we only offered a quarter. So I would like to throw out a 1.5%, because even if you add up to the 0.25, that's only 1.75, and then you do a $500 to the hourly. So that's my option to throw out there.
I'd say that's a lot more money, and I think we should be, with the whole COVID thing and our possible income in the future, we should be conservative in doing this, and that our association president and his suggestion in taking care of all of the employees equally with the extra work, instead of the high end getting high paying salaries are not having to struggle as much to keep up with their everyday expenses, and they would get a lot more money for the one-time bonus, and people who are at that low end are already trying to just make ends meet, and this would be a pretty big, significant increase, a one-time increase to those lower salary people. And that high increase to the top end doesn't help. I mean,
So
it does help anyway.
what about a 1% cost of living with the $500 and the $100? That's a compromise. What do you think, Steve, or Lucille, or Nelson?
If you think back to when we were doing the salary approval last spring, we went really low because we didn't know what COVID funding was gonna look like in the next even few months from that point in time. It was just a big unknown to us, and now we know a little bit more. What am I getting at here?
I don't know. It's getting late.
So yeah, 0.25% plus a $500, you know, that's total of, for your average range salary, like a 1.1 or 1.2%. But part of that's just one time. You're proposing that the cost of living be
1%.
and that would continue throughout, be added to the steps and lanes and such.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm thinking, the people who have talked to us about this are in that high end, every one of them. We haven't heard, we don't have the teachers know, who's looking out after these lower end teachers to express this. Maybe we should wait and give them an opportunity to let us know how hard they've worked and how much they would appreciate a $500 stipend, because it's not gonna be that much for them.
But you do the 1% cost minus 1% with the 500. The
And then
500
we're
is
really
an
talking
appreciation
about a lot of
bonus,
money.
and then we do a 1%.
But then we're really talking about a lot of money, and education is funded through income tax, and we don't know the effects of, the final effects of COVID and how our funding's going to be in the future.
Which
And
I
so-
agree, but we have this conversation every year, and we roll over money every single year.
Well,
And it's
we're
always
highly-
that fight, that
we're
where are we
always-
gonna be competitive? Where are we gonna be? I don't know. I just don't wanna see us do, I mean, I'll do whatever, but I'm just saying, at one time, there's gonna be a point where we've gotta make a little bit of a leap somewhere, or we're gonna be looking at this gap.
Well, I know we have.
So you make it progressively, but maybe it's not the right time, I don't know. I don't have
This
the
is a
magic ball.
one-time thing, we're going to be doing contracts again in the spring, and this is a one-time appreciation bonus. And I say we see how the economy and how our funding works out in the spring with the new contracts, and we compensate everybody the same who has worked extra hard. They all work extra hard. It doesn't, the 25-year teacher hasn't worked harder than the first or second or third year teacher in this whole COVID thing. It's been
Can I, President?
Sure, you gotta speak real loud.
A very interesting discussion, and I support the board any way you go. I recognize the difficulty in this. I would add just a couple things from my perspective, and I hope they're fair and accurate. But one thing to keep in mind is I don't know this for a fact, but I would be curious to know that in the association there is a far higher percentage of newer entry rank teachers than veteran teachers that have been with us for years. I don't have the data in front of me, but experience has told me that in the past. I don't know if I'm current with that. So keep that in mind when you get that recommendation, because that might be playing into an association that's planned it that way with that type of a membership. I think I do think the other thing to keep in mind is nearly everything, and I'm trying to think what's not in there, but in almost all of our negotiations, we do go off a percent because we look at valuing longevity with the district, experience, knowledge of our communities, our cultures, expertise in mentoring and helping in the buildings and doing things that a newer entry-level teacher, they're not that they're not working just as hard, but they probably are doing more just to self-sustain, where more experienced teachers are doing more to help the systems run beyond even just their self-perseverance and their self-survival. Newer teachers are generally, they're working their guts out, but they're generally just trying to keep up and to stay current and effective. And that's why we generally stay with the percent. It's because we value those things, we value those attributes and the longevity of staying with us and being a part of it. If we had known, like I think President Black pointed out, if we'd have known that this type of money would have been available, we would have probably been negotiating a percent, even back when we originally negotiated. And the last point I would point out is if you were to settle on a 1.5%, which I think is actually what Matt guys proposed, that would be about a $500 for your newer entry-level teachers. They would receive about $500. Now, your higher level employees would certainly receive much more, and you'd be talking more. So I don't want to hide that in there as well. That would definitely be true. But my last comment is I would be tickled, pleased, and happy with anything you decide. I just think those are points to keep in the equation because they've always played in our precedent of how we have compensated, but it doesn't have to go one way or the other. It can certainly go whichever way you think is the most appropriate at the moment.
Can I speak to that real quick? So this time we are talking about a bonus. We're not talking about rolling it into a regular salary. That's why I think this should be the across the board same for everyone. Because if we're talking about a bonus that is 1.5 or again, we haven't had the opportunity for these lower end people to give us input, but we've had plenty of people on the high end really push us hard to go to the high end. For instance, superintendent, what would your 1.5%, what would that be? And then what would a first or second year teacher be? And we haven't had the opportunity for them to really lobby us. We have a natural opportunity for high-end employees to lobby us, but we don't get that other end. And I don't believe that when Rich was in here speaking as the association representative, I don't think he's taken a poll. I think he was doing a good faith gesture to take care of teachers in general. Is that what the understanding I got from him? I didn't get the idea that he did a poll and he's trying to do what he's just trying to really be very fair with all the employees who have worked so hard and not base it on. So because this is a one-time bonus, is the reason I'm so passionate that we do a across the board thing. When we're talking about regular salaries, it's always a percentage.
Okay. So does anybody have any more comments? If not, I'm gonna.
Well, I do want to know what the difference is, like, superintendent, what would your 1.5% increase be? And
So
then,
anyone at the top end of the scale would be pushing over $1,000, and your newer teachers at $40,000 would be looking at 1.5. Like I said, I don't have it calculated, but it'd be like 500 versus just over 1,000 in some cases, and about 1,000. Your
Okay.
principals would be about 800, 900.
15.
So,
Okay, Matt,
yeah,
do
it'd
you-
get bringing all that way down.
Thank you. I feel like my experience negotiating and working very closely with Rich, that I can speak with considerable knowledge of the Teachers Association. And I would not hesitate for 1 second to let you know that they would love to have something ongoing if they had their choice. So if you if you could find, I mean, if you have the ability, which I think you do, to do a 1%, which is all ongoing, and then get Mary's consistency across the top to bottom, $500, that's a compromise here. But that ongoing piece helps us down the road, because as you see, we keep falling farther and farther behind, and eventually that gap gets to be, 7%, 8%, and you can't make that up in a year. You can't make that up in 3 years. So anything we can put towards ongoing, the association would advocate for it. If Rich was sitting right here, he'd tell you the same thing. His constituents would tell you that, and I just think you should consider that as you. And again, I'm grateful for whatever decision the board makes.
I'll throw in my 2 cents on that. I'm not opposed to looking at salary options and where we can go, but I will say that the ongoing portion is definitely concerning as far as chewing that off now and understanding what that ties us to in the spring, as far as dependent upon where we're going to be with budgets, where we're going to be with allocations, what our student enrollment is. We have rolled money over year after year. If you look at that 840,000 we rolled over this year, there's approximately 130,000 of that's from interest revenue above what we had estimated. The rest of it is carryover from additional budgets. But understanding that if we tied in an ongoing percentage or cost, that the board can do that, but that may come into impact and have a discussion later in the spring to say, we gave this additional 1% plus a 500, so we depleted that 800,000 down. We need to make sure that that's calculated based on the new base salary schedule for next year, understanding that may cause us to have a truth in taxation dependent upon where the certified rate is put. And so that's just part of it. We can eat up a chunk of that 800,000 and do that. And I agree with Matt. I think the teachers would appreciate that. I think the employees would greatly appreciate it. It helps them on retirement. But those are definitely budgetary discussions that would come into play next spring when we're looking at where we're going to be with our tax rate.
And I appreciate those comments, looking forward at what is going to happen with taxes based on what we do now. I think this is a wrong time to be giving a raise in general. It's a bonus that we originally started talking about, and we really haven't put the effort into seeing what the implications are on a raise right now, an ongoing raise. That's when we have to be very, very careful when it's ongoing, and now we're committed to it and tied to it. Taxpayers are committed to it and tied to it for forevermore, and I don't think we're prepared financially with the discussion to do that. I would suggest we go with that flat rate, give a bonus, appreciation bonus, let employees know how much we appreciate them, and then deal with this ongoing thing, and we can have more information, as Kyle was mentioning. Go ahead.
So in the spirit of compromise, what if we did a blended percentage plus fixed amount?
What's your blend?
And then said it's a bonus. So next spring when we negotiate contracts, we'll start again at that point in time.
What's your mixture you got going?
Well, 0.75, and then drop the one time to I don't know, just throwing numbers out. I haven't calculated anything.
What's the rush to do a percentage right now before we can look at this carefully or know what our tax rate? Why jump from, we were talked to about a bonus and now we're doing ongoing. I just think it's dangerous to do this ongoing and then we don't know what's gonna happen with the economy because of COVID, and then we're telling the existing businesses that we're gonna raise taxes in order to keep up what we're doing hastily.
Okay, so this is what I'm gonna do. The motion's been made. We either need to vote on the motion. If it doesn't, then, because we can go around the bend all day long. So someone needs a motion on how they would like to go with this.
Well, there's a motion, so.
So, okay, so I'm gonna ask for the vote. Well, there's nothing specific though, so
We need to amend the motion or retract
we
the
need
motion and
to,
restate.
so Lucille,
Yeah.
will you either amend your motion or retract it so we can make a different motion?
Restate.
Oh, you can amend it. Okay.
After it's been seconded, after it's been seconded.
Oh,
You
yeah.
have to restate.
Okay, so all in favor of the appreciation compensation, say aye.
Aye.
You failed, but okay.
You have to ask for the opposing.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Now, I'm gonna put the motion out there for the COVID-19 2020 appreciation compensation with details.
I move to do a one-time bonus of salary employees for $500 and for,
Classified?
classified employees, $100 each as an appreciation for the extra work done so far during COVID.
Okay, a motion by Mary. Is there a sec?
Second.
Second by Nelson, discussion? Anything else?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I have a question.
Okay.
Is there room that we can bump that 100 to 150?
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. Is that what you'd like to do, is 150?
At least 150. They are just as hard workers as the licensed teachers. They're on the front there receiving students for their COVID information
Okay.
at school.
So let's vote on, so we've got to vote on the 500, 100, and then if it fails, we'll re-enter the motion. So, all in favor of the 500, 100, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I don't know.
Nelson, are you opposed or in favor?
Opposed.
Okay, so now, I need a motion for the 2020 appreciation bonus.
I will make a motion to accept the COVID-19, I'm sorry, let me start over.
Okay.
I will make a motion to accept the COVID-19 2020 appreciation compensation up to the amount of $500 for salary teachers and $150 for the classified as a one-time bonus. Second.
Okay, motion by Nelson, second by Lucille, discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Number 4, River Region Land Internet Contract. I need a motion.
Motion.
Okay.
Second.
Nelson, will you state your motion, please?
Yes, I will motion to accept the River Region Land Internet contract.
Okay, and Lucille, do you want to second that again?
Second.
Thank you.
Second.
Any Discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 5, USU proposed education site. Do we have a motion? Okay,
Motion to accept the USU proposed educational site in Monument Valley High School.
okay,
Thank you.
is there a second?
Second?
By
Did
Lisa,
he
okay.
say Monument Valley High School?
Yes, it's by Monument Valley.
Well, yeah, by it.
Okay, and then discussion. I think that, we need a little bit more information on this, and Kyle, were you gonna bring that back next board meeting?
Yep.
Okay, so, all in favor?
Aye.
What's the motion to approve right now?
The motion is to approve the land deal.
We don't have
There's
an
no-
idea, we don't have
no,
anything set. Oh,
But we still have to vote on the motion.
okay.
So, Lucille's in favor. Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm confused now.
So what we had the conclusion we had come to is that this is proposed, but we really need some more information. So it's better if, the motion was overruled anyway, but it's better if we make the decision next month when Kyle has more information on that. So Lucille was the only one that voted in favor. The rest of us opposed it. Is that clear as mud?
Yeah.
It's not an actual deal, but
I oppose it because in my mind, there is no proposal.
Yeah, so there's really not, I mean, it's on there, but we really need to have more information to make it officially go forward next month. Okay,
Okay.
all right. And number 6, the San Luis School District Sex Education Committee for materials. Do I need a motion?
I move to approve what was presented to us for the San Juan School District Sex Education curriculum and committee and speakers.
Okay, so I have a motion by Steve,
I'll second the motion.
a second by Mary. Discussion?
Question.
Yes, go ahead.
So we are going to get the heritage language department and Cardiff and have them.
Yes. So, do you mind amending that to include that? Or not amending,
Seconded.
add it, yeah, what way out it was, we need to, sorry. So Nelson,
Yeah.
we need to vote on this and then remake the motion that it will include that.
Can I
Okay.
clarify just one thing?
Yes.
What was proposed by Christy and Trevor was we're adding this list to our already approved resources. So when you go to make an amendment, I'm not sure, you would need clarification, but we already have the cultural piece that's not on here because it's already pre-existing. And that's what Trevor was trying to communicate. And we have made efforts to blend that. So
Okay.
just clarification there
So
on.
do you know how to make that motion good?
Well, does the motion good then?
So is the motion okay? Oh, okay, so the motion's okay, Nelson, it does include that. Did you hear what Matt said?
Yeah, I heard that. Okay. that's
Okay.
fine.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay. Superintendent, will you, information items, or do you want me to go over?
Yes,
Go ahead.
if I do it real quickly, if that's okay. Veterans Day, no school on November 11th. I would like to know that I've been informed that our schools are still planning some Veterans Day activities, some reach out to the community, to the veterans in the community. So even though we do not have school that day, there are still some Veterans Day activities taking place to recognize and appreciate our veterans. There is a lunch with the legislators, Cardiff School District, November 12th, 2020. Our school board president has been invited to that, and President, I do have a question for you about that one when I get a chance. Just help me remember to ask you that.
Okay.
And Thanksgiving break is coming up, and board meeting is December 9th, and the board meeting date, which the document's not on there, I took it off to fix the date, and I have not put it back on. I'll get that back on next meeting.
So did we fix that May one, is that correct?
Yep, that's
Okay.
why I took it off, was to make that switch
Okay.
on that date.
All right, thank you. We are adjourned.
I should have turned this off a minute ago.
Thank you, board, sure appreciate you seeing it,